Right here. Are we ready? Signal when you're ready. Ready? Okay. The time is 4:02. I'm opening this meeting of the Grand County Municipal Building Authority. First order of business is approval of minutes.
I would move to approve the minutes of February 1st, 2022.
Motion by Evan Clapper, seconded by Kevin Walker. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Present at the meeting, I'm sorry I did not announce this earlier, are Commissioner in the room are Commissioner Kevin Walker, Commissioner Evan Clapper, Commissioner Tricia Dean, Commissioner Mary McGann. On YouTube, we have Josie Kovac, Sarah Stock, and Jacques Hadler. I am acting as chair because Jacques Hadler is unable to be here. We also have our clerk auditor, Gabe Wojtek, our associate administrator, Quinn Hall, commission coordinator, and our county attorney. So our second order of business is discussion and consideration approval of the scope of work for design and bid documents for the Jackson Street Phase 2 storm water conveyance system. Chris Baird and Bill Jackson.
Thank you. So I think as we updated you, Bill and I went up to the CIB, $447,000 grant and $909,000 1% interest loan. And the loan part is what prompts us to have a municipal building authority meeting. And that's what we through. So in order to close on that loan grant, we first have to go out to bid and be able to show the CIB that the project's going to come in within budget, you know, for which is approximately $2.7 million total. And so the price tag to get to the point where we can go out to bid, get the design done, and this also includes some geotech work and some project management from Horrocks. Approximately $174,137 is what they've quoted us. Once again, it's approximation. It's based off of our general services agreement we have with them. So I can answer any questions, but this is kind of the first phase of this project for the mostly design work and geotechnical stuff. So I'm going to bid, close on the loan, and that's construction. Hopefully by this fall. Yeah, we hope so. Get it moving.
Start work this fall. It's been a long time coming.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Sarah.
I was just wondering, I noticed in that the scope of work was expanded because you all have decided that piping the entire thing was better than having an open ditch up on the upper road. And I just wondered if you could speak to that and talk about the rationale behind that decision.
Well, I think I can answer that. I think the rationale behind that is that area is going to start being developed at some point. There's a piece of property up there near the toe of the dam, not under it, but near it, that is vested in the high density overlay. So eventually, I think that's going to get built out through there. It's probably not a good idea to have an open ditch alongside the roadway. At this point, we only have a 50-foot right-of-way too, road right-of-way up through there. So that would be congested, tight, narrow up
I was out driving around with Mike Bynum the other day. I guess he owns that property you're talking about. He's trying to sell it to me. I think that they're,
So Chris might be developing that property.
it's a nice one. We won't be able to, wouldn't be able to go under 191 without a culvert anyway. That's the majority of the cost right there.
That's a big
Okay.
portion.
That's my question.
Did that answer your question, Sarah?
I guess so. I just noticed that the storm drain master plan didn't indicate the necessity for it. So I was,
And then there'll be other opportunities, like if that area up there does develop, you know, that to gather up their storm drain of their development, and put it in that pipe versus put it into an open ditch, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah, and you wanted to tie in, what's the other road that ties in right below?
Jefferson, hopefully we can get that all tied into it, as well as, that's kind of on my radar is road improvements on Jefferson, curb and gutter, sidewalk, those kind of things as well.
okay, well, if y'all think it's prudent and makes the most sense economically for us, then I guess I defer to you all.
Yeah, and I just will speak to, you know, once we start getting our designs and really getting buttoned down on costs, it could very well say we're gonna have to maybe eliminate some of that pipeline. And that would probably be one of the areas that we would look at to do that, or down lower, closer to Patrick. So there's a lot of things that we just don't know right now without having design and cost estimates.
So following up on what Sarah said, and I admit I didn't look at this all that closely, but it sounds like we're increasing the cost of the project a little bit to help facilitate the development of some of the land around there. And I guess my question is, I know we charge impact fees when people develop. Is it appropriate to ask them, you know, if we're like increasing the amount of developable land or doing something that affects a very small number of properties, when is it appropriate to ask them to share in the costs?
Well, we are collecting impact fees and drainage right now. Technically, we would pay into the drainage impact fee, although it's not very much. You know, impact fees were somewhat constrained. They're not as valuable a tool as they used to be. We have to spend money we receive within 6 years or give it back, and it has to be for a project that's in our impact fee plan. So those two things combined, you know, constrain collecting impact fees. It also, you know, puts some requirements on us to only design facilities that maintain the current level of service. But if they were to develop, they would be paying the drainage impact fee. You know, I think I'm in the process of drafting an RFP for a new updated plan, but that plan will go into effect for a year. So it's typically a fairly, you know, 6-month planning process, and there's like another, you know, couple months of public hearings and whatnot. Then I think 3-month waiting period before, once you pass an impact fee, it can go into effect. So it's a bit of time, but you know, between here and there, the impact fees could actually go up for drainage. We identify new projects that are needed, but you know, I think it's a matter of practicality. You know, if you're talking about, you know, big open ditch, I don't think for one that the most expensive parts of the project that would even be feasible. But you know, secondarily, I think in the modern context of subdivision design, I don't think that you would typically do an open ditch like that for a huge stormwater conveyance system. Yeah. It's just not the modern standard.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I just want to kind of tag onto that a little bit. You know, thought that crossed my mind that it would look like we were trying to build something for a development. That's not the case, but that's just, it's industry standards, like your storm drain.
But yeah, it's not just, you know, for the properties that are immediately adjacent to the pipeline. that,
Oh, no.
that, whole system, you know, saves many, many properties that fan out all across that whole area.
And just to be clear, I'm just talking about the incremental cost. You know, I know that most of this has to be a pipe because it's going under a pipeline.
I think the cost of the project went up considerably because there's approximately 30% cost price, right? Raises 30% from getting the contractor there, paying wages to buying materials, everything just went up so much.
But I mean, we have the option at some point, once we, you know, get the bids back, to scale it back if we want. I mean, this is not the point in time where we're nailing down any of the construction details. So like Bill said, if the bids come in too high, you have to actually go back to part of it. It's just because we don't have enough money to do that. So I think, you know, in the long run, it makes sense, you know, for, especially since we're maintaining it and operating it. The pipeline. I mean, we did a pipeline also for project associated with Heckler, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of,
And that was in the drainage master plan as well, get that. Just tied it in with that.
Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the scope of work from Horrocks Engineering for the design of the Jackson Street Phase 2 stormwater conveyance system and the drafting of associated bid documents.
Motion by Ellen Clapper. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mary.
Second by Tricia Dean. Discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We have reached the end of this agenda, so I will adjourn this meeting if there is no objection. The time is 4:14. The same people are present for this meeting as were for the last, and I am opening this meeting of the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District Administrative Control Board. May 17th, 2022. Are there any citizens to be heard on and concerning Thompson Springs Special Fire District? I don't see any. Oh, Sana first. Oh, Sana. Up to the front and sit down and where they were and state your name and talk into the mic. It's pretty directional.
Okay. My name is Sandy Carey and I do own property in Thompson. I attended a meeting last fall with the fire department and they were talking about increasing taxes for new fire trucks and all different things like that. So this might be an old issue, but just a feather in your cap. They were talking about their their fire truck that was outdated, that was reached 3 stories. And it's common for smaller departments to purchase used vehicles. Friend in Alaska and her husband's been the fire chief for years and years and years up there, Anchorage, and they purchased used fire trucks. From what Archie Walker said was that the fire truck, I think it was the 3-story fire truck, the truck that goes 3 stories, was outdated. I can't imagine it probably has as many as 10,000 miles on it because you certainly don't see it going around the town. So it certainly is not worn out. It, you know, you get off the parking lot and it's already outdated. So, but what I'm thinking is the reason we need a 3-story fire truck or a ladder that would have 3 stories is basically, you know, hotels and probably a few homes. And for all of the citizens in Moab to occur that additional cost for that fire truck, I think it probably should be put on any building that's 3 stories high. And although hotels probably have a sprinkler system, but still the fact remains that we need to have a 3-story or a ladder that will go up 3 stories. I own property on the first floor of a 3-story building, so I would be included in that tax increase. If that tax just went for any building that's 3 stories high, because they're generating a lot more money as hotels as 3 stories as a 1-story or a
Yeah.
2-story.
At this point, Thompson Springs does not pay any fire
Right.
tax.
Right, but I'm moving back towards getting a brand new fire truck that will go 3 stories is maybe possibility of, instead of taxing everybody in Moab or Grand County for a fire truck that will reach 3 stories, it should be just the buildings or the structures that are 3 stories high, because like I said, they're obviously generating a lot more income. And that's requiring us to purchase that type of a fire truck. So basically that's, and like I said, you may have already made a decision on this, but maybe in the future.
It would, yeah, with Mark Markham. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we have any other citizens to be heard? Okay, approval of minutes.
I would move to approve the minutes of April 19th, 2022.
A motion by Evan Clapper, second by Kevin Walker. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Ratification of payment of bills. Does someone have the bills in front of them? I couldn't find them in my emails. When were they sent out?
Yeah, so I'll,
Oh, okay.
I'll move to approve bills of $1,214.30.
Oh, I
$1,646.88 payroll for a total of $2,861.18.
Motion by Kevin Walker.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Tricia Dean. Discussion? All in favor of ratifying the bills? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Chief Markham is not here tonight, so I will read the report. On the second, a railroad tire fire on the train tracks, Crescent Junction area, E41 mile marker E682, BOM fire investigator. Equipment, new tires on engine 21. Business, chief submitted reimbursement request for Utah State license plate grant, $4,837.51. Open period for wildland fire grant begins. Chief will apply for the funding. That is his report. We have reached the end of the agenda. So if I have no objections, I will adjourn this meeting. Okay. The time is 4:21. We will open this, the Grand County Commission meeting. The people that were present for the other 2 meetings are still present here. The first order of business is the pledge. Let's stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any citizens to be heard for the Grand County Commission agenda? Anyone online? It doesn't look like it.
It looks like we have Wits with a hand raised online.
Oh,
Thank you very
Mark.
much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Let me lower my hand. My name is Mark Horowitz. I was interested to hear discussion 2 meetings ago about the Jackson Street detention pond and the ensuing pipe that has to go in, whether it's to be a pipe or a culvert. And I'm not really concerned about whether it should be a pipe or a culvert, but I was concerned about the discussion that happened around that with regards to property in that area that is going to be developed. And it was mentioned that that properties in that area were covered by the HDHO overlay. But since the HDHO experiment has reached its limit, I don't think we should be discussing properties as though they were imminently future HDO properties. No, the land in that area is currently zoned rural residential. There's about 7 or 8 acres there, and there's a 5-acre deed restricted property there. So I just don't think it's a fair idea. Being an opponent, a staunch opponent of the HDHO, I think it's the big mistake for the future. When you have 175 cars pulling out behind that Wyndham Hotel, it's going to be hard. But for many reasons, I'm a staunch opponent to HDHO, and I was an opponent of the HDHO being overlaid on the property that was discussed today. And the HDHO experiment has reached its 300 limit and is no longer applicable for the time being. So please don't consider properties as being under the HDHO. I hope I've made myself clear, and I wish us all a lot of luck. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark. Any other citizens to be heard? Okay, we are on to presentations by Emory Telecom. No, we have, excuse me, Science of Sound first. Les Bloomberg. It's different reading this agenda with the new format. I like it. I think I'm going to like it. It's a learning curve. Yeah.
Did we lose them?
We've lost our presenters. Something's going on tonight.
Should we
Shall we move
on to the next
Emory
item and stop the
Telecom?
order?
Yeah, let's move to Emory Telecom.
Commissioners.
Oh.
I'm happy to sit back down if you want to walk back to the agenda.
We're okay.
Les is on vacation. I vote sorry to
Okay.
allow him to go first.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Okay, no,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Find somebody who could help me get water.
There's a guest, a user guest.
There's a free guest one.
So I'm there, but it has for you to take a test one?
No.
No, you,
That's simple. And then how do I get the screen in?
Well, yeah,
I don't have a link to it.
you have to go to the agenda.
Continue.
I don't know why, I didn't get a link either. I don't know why links aren't going out anymore. So I had to search for it.
the link's at the top.
At the agenda, but they used to make it easy. Punch you the link in your email and that doesn't happen.
I think I got one. Anyway.
The link is at the top of the agenda.
So I can start while she does this.
Great.
Okay.
So my name is Les Blomberg. I'm the executive director of the Noise Pollution Clearinghouse. I've been in town this past week. I've been in town this past week doing some training with the deputies on noise enforcement. The presentation I'm going to give to you is an abbreviated version of one of the sessions I do for the deputies, and then also I have some of the results of some of our monitoring that
we've done that I was going to present to you. So I can. Oh, okay. Thank you for doing this. Okay. So to just begin with, noise is a vibration in the air, and or sound is a vibration in the air. Noise is a sound that is harmful, that is out of place, or that is unwanted. Those are kind of like the initial definitions we should work with here. Now, you guys know a lot about wind. Notice that, man. Not seen it like this. The wind moves air like this. Noise, however, is different. It moves air molecules back and forth like this, and that's not very much that it moves. That's that start and stop finish line there. It begins and ends at exactly the same place the air molecules do. What happens is the air is compressed and rarefied, and that moves as a wave, that compression. But the molecules themselves don't really move other than this little bit. But that compression moves out from there. What we do is we measure the pressure of that change, okay? And when we measure that pressure, we measure it much like you measure a wave. We can measure the amplitude, which is the loudness, and it usually be something you've seen as dBA usually. Or we can measure the frequency, the hertz, which is how long it, how many times it repeats in a given period of time. The problem is that we can hear, you usually measure pressure in like pounds per square inch, or we use the metric equivalent, which is pascals. But the problem is that we can hear from 20 pascals to 20 million pascals. That's just a huge range. It's actually amazing, our ears, how well it are at hearing very quiet and very loud sounds. But back in the 30s, when they were inventing sound level meters, that range was too big for them. So they decided they had to compress it. And in some sense, we're suffering from that ever since. Because instead of using those micropascals as the unit, the scientists back then said, oh, let's throw in a logarithm, because logarithms compress it. You don't have to know anything about logarithms, but all you need to know is that this makes understanding noise a little difficult, a little different than the math you're normally using. Also, kind of interest, they threw in a reference level. Now, you don't have to know anything about this, but the takeaway is that 0 decibels is our threshold of hearing, and they mathematically made it work out that way. Roughly 0 decibels is our threshold of hearing. So now we've taken that 20 to 20 million range, and we've made it from 0 to 120. So it's much compressed. But the compression hasn't been all to our advantage, because one of the costs of doing that compression is that you can't just add decibel levels anymore. So 50 decibels plus 50 decibels is not 100 decibels. 50 plus 50 is 53. And if you can see on this slide I'm showing, every time you double the number of decibels, you add 3. If one source is 50, 2 of them is 53, 4 of them is 56, 8 of them is 59. One thing that I want to bring to your attention is an example of that adding sources. So as I'm talking to you, you're catching the direct path of my voice. And you're probably catching some reflections off of the walls and such too. Now, in this diagram, you'll see that I've got it drawn here. The S is the source, the R is the receiver. The direct path would be straight from S to R. The reflected path off the ground is also, if it's a perfect reflection, is going to be a second path. And that's going to be, in some sense, the equivalent of another source. So now, instead of one source at 50 that you would be hearing me, you're hearing me two sources at 53. Now, what's even more interesting is when you put that sound in the valley. Just put that sound in the valley, as you can see at the bottom. But you get many, many more reflected tones. This isn't even counting the echoes off of the valley walls behind you and behind this receiver. It's just, you get more paths between you and the receiver. And one of the very unique things about Moab here is that it is got a lot of hard ground. And so you're doing a lot of, you have a very reflective surface in many places. Especially compared to where I live, in the Northeast, where there's 10,000 years of forest debris. We're hearing people can't hear. Sorry, yeah. Sorry. Can you hear better now, John? Does that work? Is that better?
It's still relatively muted. It was great, and then all of a sudden it just cut out mostly.
Okay. I sit right here. Let me know if this isn't working, Chuck.
That's actually much better, Les. Thank you.
I gotta talk up and talk close. Okay. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is you guys have got a very hard surface, lots of reflections. That I'm going to talk about the implications of that. But it's just like that adding. It's kind of like you've added more sources when you have a noise source here. The other thing, just to note, is that these things attached to our heads here do the same thing. They're kind of designed to be a source of reflections and to channel the noise into our ears. So this, the ear itself, or into our skull, really, into our head. The ear itself is meant to capture the noise and channel it in using that same principle. Another a useful rule of thumb, I think, for you is that every time you double the distance from a noise, it decreases by 6 decibels. Noise drops as we get farther and farther away from it.
Somebody must have tripped over the plug, Jacques.
That's what it sounds like, John, for sure.
Yeah, because it's definitely there. Oh, that's Jared. So we're all online. There's no commission chambers.
Hey, I'm on my desktop now. We lost the Wi-Fi in the chambers, so I don't know where it went. We're working on it.
Thank you, Quinn.
Jacques, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you, Quinn. Thanks. You're back live.
Just so you know, Jacques, your head is the whole screen, so.
We have a good view.
To everybody online, we lost the Wi-Fi in the chambers, but I think we're back up.
All right.
Yeah, okay, quick. Okay. So the other thing that I think is useful to understand, and this is another consequence of the using decibels and using instead of just using pressure. It's the logarithm, and when you use decibels, what happens is sharing the rows.
Sarah says she can't hear the sound.
It seems like it's not just left.
Right now, let's keep the test. Okay, yes, can you hear me? Lisa, can you hear us again? Is that better? And, the podium was just like. Good, that's why I brought it back up. It's the one that should be doing it. Is that my fault? Hello, can you hear me here? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, but it's
Sarah?
just not as
Okay.
clear as it was before. It's
Oh.
almost like the mic
Oh,
got
microphone.
changed.
Testing.
Junk show.
Yeah. You guys can hear us on the Darius mics, right?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Okay, so can you hear me here?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's
I feel
better.
comfy.
Okay. So the next implication that I wanted to tell you about is the loudness. And there's a rule of thumb that we use that is that every 10 decibel increase is a doubling of the loudness. And I think this is really important, especially as you consider the decibel limits in your ordinance. That people think that, if you're going from like 50 decibels to 60 decibels, what's that? If you kind of just think in your head, oh, that looks like maybe 20% increase. It's not that much. But in truth, the difference between 50 and 60 decibels is a doubling of the loudness. And this, again, is related to the logarithm. It's also related to the fact that our hearing is a biological system and doesn't act just like a sound pressure level meter does act. So I've got a graphic here that shows how to think of loudness, where I've used the vertical scale to represent that doubling. So you can see where the 50 is, and you can see 60, I've got twice as far up. And then the 70 is twice as far up again from that. And then I've got a couple of images when we get to the results that'll show you that. And I think that's easier because when you see results in terms of decibels that are presented in a linear scale, it looks like it's much quieter than it really is. So this map here, I wanted to talk a little bit about what is so unique about your acoustic environment. Obviously, you guys know that you probably know that you've got a unique acoustic environment, just like you have an incredibly unique visual environment. This map here is of the background decibel levels modeled by the National Park Service, with the dark brown being roughly 20 decibels, being they call it the L50 level. It's the level that exceeded 50% of the time. You can kind of think of it as the average level, but it's not an average. The green is 40 decibels, and you can see the shadings in between there. And again, this was modeling done by the National Park Service. It's not measured as such, but it's based on measurements. And you can see that it really corresponds to the amount of moisture in the air. And that's because of a couple things. Less moisture means fewer trees. Trees, go ahead, means less wind noise through those trees. It means fewer barriers to sound in your environment. It means because you don't have leaves falling onto the ground, you have harder ground, not this buildup of leaf matter for centuries, thousands of years in some places. You have fewer birds and insects. And so basically you have a much larger acoustical horizon than other places in the country. For example, where I come from in the East. You also have any noise that you have has a much larger acoustical footprint. And the way to think about this horizon, the acoustical horizon, if you're in a noisy environment, think of it a really busy restaurant. The only person you can hear is the person on the other side of your table. You can't even eavesdrop on the next table, even if you wanted to, right? However, that's in a noisy environment. However, you go to a quiet environment and have a dinner, a really quiet restaurant, then you can hear the tables next to you, right? Your acoustic horizon is larger because you can hear those people in those seats, where in a noisier background environment, you can't hear them. And the same thing happens here. Now about that acoustic footprint, so any noise in the environment, in a quieter environment, will be heard at a much greater distances than in a noisy one. And on top of that, we add the reflections that we talked about earlier due to your valley walls and to the location of homes on your valley walls. It means that you guys have both a very unique acoustic environment that is, worthy of protection and very easy with noise, easy to ruin. Just like in a place without very many trees, a scar in the landscape can be seen from a long ways away. A scar and the soundscape can be heard for a long ways in this environment. So this is the results of our testing last Thursday from 9 to about 1 on Sand Flats Road. Just to orient yourself a little bit, the bottom scale is the vehicle types, starting with UTVs, Jeeps, trucks, motorcycles, cars, and ignore 6 and 7 there. The scale, the first blue line is 50 decibels, the second one is 60, the third is 70. That red line is your threshold or your limit for the 50-foot drive-by test. And that's what we were doing. We were doing a 50-foot drive-by test. This is a manner of operation test. So we were measuring the noise as people drove by. This is not an equipment test, the other test that you have in your noise rigs, which was at 20 inches. We're just measuring how people operate their vehicle. And this is really dependent on, how much gas they give it and the condition of their exhaust system, whether it's modified, whether it's old, stuff like that. And so each one of those dots or diamonds is a vehicle that we measured as it passed. You can see the 74th decibel threshold there. So you can see the violations of that regulation above are the ones that are above the threshold. You can see about 1, 2, 3 very significant violations. And go ahead. There are a total of 9 violations. There are 67 data points on that graph. It was 67 vehicles that we measured. There were 6 UTV violations that we found. And just to give you some perspective on that unique acoustic environment, if you look at the acoustic footprint, where you would hear these different vehicles if there were no buildings and barriers in the way. You take a typical car, which is sitting right at the 60 decibel level, and compare it to like your threshold, your limit of 74 decibels. The acoustic footprint, the area where you can hear that vehicle, is about 25 times larger for that 74 decibel ATV, or any vehicle for that matter, at 74 decibels than an average car at 60 decibels. And so you've got a very large footprint still of where you've set your limit. But as you can see, you've also set your limit at a level that is that will catch some of the worst offenders and help you eliminate them from your community. That's it. Yeah, that is it.
Did you happen to notice anecdotally how many of those trucks were the full size that our ordinance doesn't apply to?
No, that's a really good point. Some of those trucks probably were of a larger size that your ordinance doesn't. So your ordinance applies to vehicles under 9,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. And we did not have any way to distinguish those. If I had to guess, I would say at least a third, maybe more.
Okay.
Maybe you could asterisk that in your final graph that you sent
Sure.
me.
But in any case, if I'm reading the graph correctly, all the trucks passed regardless, so even if they didn't need the.
Right, but it actually might show trucks a lot quieter if we excluded those larger trucks.
Right.
So I still think it's an important note.
Yeah. I mean, this is a level that, so this test tests the manner of operation. But we did test a full throttle acceleration of a pickup truck, and it came in underneath that. And that was a full throttle. I mean, that was all the way. And so. Of a
That was a
pickup.
sheriff vehicle, so
Sheriff
that's an
vehicle.
F-150, right?
Yeah,
So when you say the footprint is 25 times larger, is that 25 times the radius or 25
Area.
times area?
the area, yeah, the area, the surface
So you
area.
can hear it from 5 times as far away.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I mean, if you went with the distance away, you wouldn't have the full circle of the area that you get. And so I think it's more useful to talk about not how far away you can hear it, but the total area that it is impacting, because those are all the people that will hear it. Now, with the assumption that there are no buildings, so buildings can block it, terrain can block it, but just the same will be true of the car too. So it'll still be proportional. And so.
Okay, but because they're moving along a line, I think the number of people affected actually goes
Goes
up.
up. Well, that's the next thing you can do is draw it along the line too. Yes, and so you get the linear distance. Yeah.
Hey, Les, can
While
you
you're
speak?
here, one thing I think that would be great for the public to hear, for you to speak to, are these stationary noise meters. So we get 2 types of emails specifically recently related to noise enforcement. And one is, Sheriff's Office, please do more. And the other one is, hey, county, why don't you buy one of these stationary noise meters that all the big cities are doing? And they're either using them for education or enforcement, and you could issue an automatic citation. But your position is those are complex and we're not quite ready. And so could you speak to that? Because we've probably gotten about 10 emails asking about those stationary noise meters.
So I think a stationary noise meter to be used for educational purposes, it would be a good tool. However, you have to do it very well, because it's going to be difficult to get it lined up just perfectly, because it would be the noise source is behind the vehicle, right? The noise is generally has some directional component, and that direction is backwards, and the vehicle's going forward. And so where you put the microphone and you can't put the microphone at the display, right? Because the person's going to get a lower number. They're going to think, oh, I'm well in compliance, right? But as soon as they drive past it, they're in violation, but they're not able to see it. So that's one complexity that you have to deal with. The other thing is that there are communities that are starting to explore using a camera and a noise meter to issue citations immediately. I think it's a little early in the process. I think if you can get one of these companies to do the pilot here, that would be great. But there are a number of challenges with enforcement. One of the things I did not include in this slide is that a sound level meter is not like a radar gun. A sound or the radar gun that the police officer uses to measure speed, you just aim it at the car. It tells you how fast that car is going. Our sound level meter, you put it out there, it gives you all of the sound in the entire environment. So it would be kind of like aiming your radar gun at the highway and reading like 250 miles an hour. Okay. And now what we do is what the deputies have been trained to do is to subtract out this. We're going to actually calculate the noise level by taking the total sound. We're going to usually turn the source off, measure the background, subtract the two, and then we know what the source is. So that isn't quite so you're going to have some issues with that with respect to this automated process. You got that I think they really need, that it may take a little more time to work out.
Well, then they're quite expensive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
They are, but doing an educational one would not be.
Okay.
Because that's just an LED display and a noise meter. I mean, it's expensive, but it's no more expensive. It's on the same order of magnitude of what you've already put out for your sound level meter.
Right.
So you would need, an LED display and a microphone and a sound level meter, basically.
Right.
The other things that Les has talked about is you can't measure caravans. You have to get a certain number of dBA drop in between your noise because that's part of this calculation. And so, you know, there's some increase of sound in a caravan that people might see. Another issue, are people just going to rev up as they go through to see how loud they can get? Is it going to increase noise? We don't know. We don't know until we put it out there. And then how do you secure it? Because maybe it's a $5,000 to $10,000 rig instead of a $100,000 rig, but that's still a lot of money for Grand County. And so how do you do it in a way that's going to be secure? So those are all questions that we need to explore.
Yep. A nice place to put this would, for educational purposes, would be as vehicles pull away from a stop sign. And, you know, some of the better locations I've seen would include the ticket booth at Sand Flats, and there's a location near the cemetery as you go up Sand Flats, which is another good place. I think another good location might be along the Rotary Park. Seemed like a good place. That doesn't have that doesn't involve accelerating away from a intersection. And so I think you would find lower levels there, but I think that's another good location.
Out on King Creek at that three-way stop, I guess.
The key is to find a place that isn't too noisy, that doesn't have a lot of.
That place would be really good.
Okay.
But it does have a hillside there, so I wonder if, does that?
We can deal with that.
Okay, right.
And remind me, the 67, was that just the Low Cemetery, or that was the King Creek location in the Low Cemetery?
This here is only at
Near the stop sign.
Yeah, near the stop sign on Sand Flats.
So we did actually 3 different distinct noise measurement segments. One was out at Cane Creek. It's not included in here, but what was really fascinating there, because everyone's speeding, right? We were pretty close to Moonfire Canyon on that little straightaway that's paved, and everyone was going about 40 per the deputies they know how fast people are going. And the violations were significantly higher at that location as people were speeding, which was also good for the deputies to see, because noise is really important, but so is speed limit enforcement. We did, and Les has a little bit he has some additional data we can get you guys later, but only one team actually did a speed radar and the noise measurement at the same time, and that's something we want to track more data in the future.
It would definitely be worthwhile getting a kind of a relationship between UTV speed and decibel levels. Because certainly for other vehicles, there is a very, very good correlation between speed and noise. And you could hear that as you stand on the road. If you listen to a car pass you at 25 miles an hour, typical speed limit in this community, almost all of the sound, especially if it's on a straightaway, almost the only sound you will hear if you're 50 or 100 feet away is the sound of the tires. If you listen, go listen, you'll hear tires only. However, when it comes to an ATV, that's not the case. You usually hear, the tires, the transmission, the engine at the same time. And so that's one of the differences in the nature of the sound of the various vehicles. But certainly your typical car will be only tire sound as you go by.
So we have more work to do with Les. We need more Les. The other thing, and I know we need to move on, is that at that King Creek location, trucks pulling ATVs on trailers also exceeded the noise ordinance when they were speeding. It's a different kind of noise. It's not the same frequency. It's not the same acoustic footprint, but they were also exceeding our drive-by noise limit when they were speeding. So not when they weren't, right? So they were fine. Trucks hauling trailers were fine if they weren't speeding, but interesting.
Any further questions for Les?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are now to Emory Telecom.
So,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think there's another agenda item, I forget what letter it is, that involves Emory that's later in agenda. Could we move it up to immediately after the presentation?
Certainly. There's I think, where is it?
I'm Jared Anderson with Emory Tel.
No, Jared, go ahead. This microphone is quite direct.
So sit down and look at it.
Give us a sound check. Jacques, can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me okay? Online?
Yeah, we got you. You're fine.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I'm Jared Anderson, COO with Emory Telecom, and appreciate your time tonight. My goal is just to give you an update of our fiber project. And I want to use the time wisely so that I address any questions that you may have. And so in the agenda, I've got a presentation, and what that does is it details area by area that we are going to cut over to fiber. Fiber to the home, fiber to the business, and so forth. The one caveat to that is that these maps change all the time. Whether there's permitting delays or other issues that get in the way, we'll move an area up in front of another just so that we can keep the crews rolling. Does that make sense? And so I just want to say that these areas, they'll all absolutely be done within the next 5 years, but we may have to shuffle things around. In fact, we already shuffled one into this year in Moab City that wasn't slated till next year, just in an effort to try and accelerate the process. So to take a quick step back, we recently received from the State Public Service Commission CPCN status. And what that means is we are now a certificated provider, whereas before we were competing against other carriers in the Grand and San Juan area without any state support. We are now considered a provider of last resort. And so we have an obligation to serve. And as such, we have access to the State Universal Service Fund to help with these high cost fiber bills. And so without going into a ton of detail on that, we're really excited about that status. It enables us to build out all of Grand and San Juan. We recently completed Carbon and Emory counties. I think we're at a 99 point something fiber rate at this point. We've only got, I believe, 32 customers left on copper, and they'll be cut soon. So the state saw what we did in Carbon and Emory and said, yeah, we'll grant you that status at Grand and San Juan. So really excited about it. Would you like me to go through the maps, or would you like me to go through the show and tell that shows what we do in the streets and on the power poles and in homes?
Let me find out from my commissioners. I know I looked at the maps quite extensively. If someone would like him to go through the maps that were in the packet, would you please indicate that you would like that? Otherwise, we will move to looking at the.
I think at least a brief discussion of the maps. I think
Okay.
would be helpful.
It might be good for the public to see them too.
Okay.
So
let me share my screen really quick.
Yeah, while you're pulling that up, my first question was that 2022, was that complete or still, that's what's coming?
2022 is still in progress. And we've got, I'm trying to remember how many customers it represents, but when I get to that slide for Moab, I'll show you a little bit more detail. So I'll kind of skip this about us section. We've been ramping up Grand and San Juan employees. I think we're up to, I took everybody to lunch today and I think we had about 15 or 16 people there that are all local. And so that's great. I remember, several years ago when we were new to the area, we had 2 or 3 people down here. And so we've definitely expanded, built a business office with some warehousing capability and so forth. So Emory Telecom as a whole is about 100 people. We're still a relatively small company. This is a far zoomed out version of Grand County as a whole, with the exception of North Grand County.
And it just shows 2022. Castle Valley is complete. And then it shows these other yellow areas that are shaded. As we zoom into Moab in further slides, you'll be able to see a little bit more detail on what we plan on cutting over. Most of these are already customers that are on our existing cable internet network. And this will be a complete overlay with the ultimate goal of decommissioning the cable internet network, pulling down that copper plant, and being purely on fiber services. Moving on to 2023, you see the green areas that it added. And again, this is zoomed out really far. And so it's a lot easier to see as we get into some of these slides down the deck a bit. Blue 2024, filling in between the far end of Spanish Valley and into Moab. And then 25 to 27, we'll be able to refine those areas into years as we get a little bit closer. But you can see that it includes everything in Grand County. When I go to North Grand County, you can see Thompson Springs. That's currently slated for this year. And so they'll have fiber to the home as well. There's already fiber along that entire corridor. So from Salt Lake all the way to Denver, we have our own fiber along the highway system. So, and then also I didn't include San Juan County with the exception of Spanish Valley because it's relevant due to its proximity, but there's an entire 5-year plan for San Juan County as well. You can see some of the pink areas in 25 to 27 that are also getting fiber that are very remote. Moab, if I move into Moab 2022, there's 3 nodes that we'll be cutting over this year. And so that includes this northwestern yellow section, this other large yellow section. And then if I go to the next, well, I think Spanish Valley is in a different deck, but there's a large portion of Spanish Valley getting converted this year as well. The orange, I should say, is already fiber as well. And what this map does not include is our existing cable internet network. This is purely fiber. And so the entire town is covered with cable internet. I just didn't include it to keep the map a little bit less busy. You can see 2023, some of northern Moab being built. 2024, the blue areas. And then 25 to 27, the pink areas. We'd love nothing more to accelerate this plan. So as much capital as we can put out to get this done quicker, the better for the community, the better for us.
So what kind of things would determine whether you're able to accelerate or not?
Cash flow and just cash management, cash flow and just permitting issues and things like that.
So it's not like, are there additional subsidies from the state or other entities that, or is it just a question of how your business is doing?
No, most of it. So especially Moab City, it's not really eligible for federal funding and grants because it's already covered by what the feds deem acceptable broadband service. And so it automatically exempts the Moab City from federal funding as it stands today. Now, state universal service funding, yes, we do have the ability to go in for state funding to help with some of these high cost builds. And to put it in perspective, it costs, all things considered, approximately $3,000 per subscriber to switch them over to fiber. And so in a rural area, and this is a rural area. And so when you consider the density of Salt Lake and the capital expenditure that you have to put out, but you cover so many more households, you have those economies of scale to where you don't need state support and federal support to make it economically feasible. So Spanish Valley, you can see that down in 22, southern end of Spanish Valley, we'll be cutting one of those nodes. 23, adding a tiny area up by the golf course. 24, the vast majority of Spanish Valley at that point is covered. And then 25 to 27, some of the outskirts that are pretty difficult to reach. Castle Valley was a really good demonstration and learning experience for us because that happened last year and this year. And as you know, it's really rocky terrain, big lots, expensive build outs, and we were able to successfully complete Castle Valley. So that was a good feat. I've put my contact information, and again, the caveat, all areas and time frames may be subject to change. I don't want them to slip. If anything, I would love to see things accelerated. So we'll do our best there. Does anybody want or have time for some of the visual stuff? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try and make it quick. So this is 1.25 inch conduit. This is what goes in the ground. And so when we're doing a buried project, buried is more expensive because construction is really expensive, but this is the conduit that typically goes in the ground.
Should we, let's take down the,
Stop sharing your screen.
then people online can see what you're showing us.
Yeah, let me share my camera.
Okay. Well, kind of.
Or there's one behind you. You can.
So if they're looking at my camera, they'll be able to see. So 1.25 inch conduit. Once the conduit's in the ground, we have a future path. And the beauty of that is we don't have to go back and reconstruct. And so we blow fiber through this conduit, and fiber is just glass. And so for those that aren't super familiar with it, each one of these is a buffer tube, and depending on the fiber size and count, there's 12 fiber in each color. They're color coordinated so that we know on each end what we have to splice together to make the cable match consistently throughout. And so a fiber is about the size of a hair. It's got a coating on it so that it's a little bit of a protective coating, and it's glass. And then on the other end, all you've got is a laser on each end. And so you shine the light down the glass, and so it's literally the speed of light. And the faster the laser or the optics on each end is flashing, that affects the speed that the data is transmitted at. And so the beauty of fiber is that right now we're delivering 1 gig to the household. 1 gig up, 1 gig down. The next rendition of fiber to the home is 10 gig. They call it 10 gig XGS PON. All you do is you change the laser on each end. Nothing has to happen in between. And so you instantly upgrade to 10 gig to the home. And so that helps account for future needs. You can pass this around and look at the fibers. It is glass, so don't get a sliver.
So what in Moab and Spanish Valley, what percentage is buried, and is any of it like up on poles, or do you bury everything?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Is everything being buried, or are you using poles in some places?
It's a drastic mix depending on where we're at in town. The cost is very expensive to go buried, and so we do go aerial where possible if there's existing aerial infrastructure. I'm not putting in new poles unless there's some sort of a sometimes there's a archaeological site or something that we've got to go around. And so there's reasons why every once in a while we'll put in a new pole. We don't want to put in new aerial poles in the infrastructure if we don't have to. In fact, in Carbon and Emery, we're in the middle of projects where we're going back and burying things that were aerial that have become problem areas, whether they're getting hit by trucks or things like that. And so if it's buried, it goes in the conduit, the fiber goes in the conduit, and then we're connected on each side. If it's aerial, we have an existing pole attachment agreement with Rocky Mountain Power, and this is what goes up on the pole. This is the size of the fiber that's typically lashed to the strand on the pole line. We already have the coax internet lashed on those poles. So ultimately, this will go on the same, and then eventually the coax comes down. This is called an MST, and we leave these attached to the poles to distribute fiber to 6 households. So you can see there's 6 ports. This plugs in to one of these ports, and if it's an aerial, if their power service is currently delivered to the home aerial, this follows the same path to the eve of the household. If it's a newer subdivision and everything's buried, then we don't we don't come up and go aerial to the house, we stay buried to the household. And so utilize a variety of different contractors for this work. We use our guys, and then we also use Fiber Tel a lot. You'll see their trucks around. We do use contractors for construction. We do not use contractors in people's yards or in their homes. We use our own employees. So anytime we send somebody into a home to do the install, it's one of our direct employees. This is the box that goes on the side of the house for fiber distribution, and this is where we come up out of the ground and enter the home, or we come aerial down the home or down the side of the house and go into the home this way. We switch from a hardened fiber to a indoor fiber that's more pliable. It can bend around corners, and it's just not as thick and intrusive as the exterior stuff, and that's what this is. The fiber goes into what's called an ONT. For simplicity, this is your Wi-Fi router. It's kind of like your fiber modem. And so these are the latest rendition of our fiber ONTs. They handle the Wi-Fi in the home. There's multiple antennas. These are XGS 10 gig PON compatible. And so when it's time to upgrade to 10 gig, and it's called an SFP, but a little laser switches out, you put the 10 gig laser in, you plug the fiber back in, you do the same on the other end, and you're ready. And so this is what goes in the home. This is just another buried 4-way future path instead of an 1.25 inch, just a different type of conduit. And battery backup, we do supply battery backup with our modems right now, so that in the event of a power outage, you've got some battery supply time. And so this is what the battery looks like. And I think from that standpoint, that's pretty much everything we do. We try to keep yards the way they looked when we started the project. We're really particular about that. And we've literally done this 10,000 times up in Carbon and Emery. And so we're familiar with the process and excited to serve the community better. And so it's a good project. It's also why we need the franchise agreement. We're going to be in your right of ways quite a bit. And so that was a topic on the agenda as well. Does anybody have questions for me? Or
Jared, how is it Emery's preference?
I will move item C to right now. Unless there's more questions.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Well, I can ask one while we're doing item C.
Yeah. So we will move to item C, ordinance for granting eFiber a franchise for communication system.
Hey, all, can everybody hear the folks on Zoom?
Which is the hotspot. I passed this around. Bill Jackson made some suggestions, made a few modifications. It said council, I changed it to commission. And there are some other small changes. Christina, did you ever look at it?
I didn't have a chance to look at it, and I didn't know it was on here, and I would like a chance to look at it.
In the meantime, I would move to approve the ordinance granting eFiber Moab LLC a franchise for a communication system pending attorney approval. Does that work?
I don't like those conditional approvals, so I'd really rather wait until it's ready. I'm not sure, this is happening a lot, like agenda summaries for the attorney review just says NA. And, anytime we're entering into a contract, an agreement of this type needs to go through county attorney review. And I would like the commission and you guys sent it to me for sure. I just didn't get to it, and I didn't realize it was being put on here, and I didn't get any notice of that specifically. But it would be great if the commission administrator's office would catch on the agenda summaries when folks are just putting NA for attorney review. And I'm overwhelmed and overworked, and I don't have enough people. So I appreciate patience with my office, because I know it takes longer than everyone wants, but I haven't had a chance to look at this.
And I will say that I don't think we're in a huge hurry on it. We are continuing to operate with the city and the county within the bounds that the engineering department and everything expects. And so I don't think it's a giant hurry. We've been here since 2009. So it's something that we definitely want to get taken care of. If there's red lines, then I'm happy to route them over my attorney and kind of work through the process with you.
So we never got a second on that motion.
Mary, I think there's some questions on Zoom.
Oh, what?
Can you guys hear us?
Oh, we have questions on Zoom?
Can you hear us?
Who's trying to talk?
Sarah.
Sarah, are you trying to talk?
Yeah,
She
can
looks
you not hear us?
Oh, Joe, she's talking. We can't hear you.
I can hear you, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm out here. My question.
I can hear just fine also.
Can you put your question in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that. It's irrelevant, actually. It was just a time killer in case Christina was gonna do that. But
There, we can hear you now, Sarah. Go for it.
Okay. Well, my question was simple and sort of, well, is it Emery's, is it your preference to go underground to each house, or are you planning to do overland?
So the answer to that is if there's no existing aerial route into the house, such as new developments, things like that, then the route will be buried to the house. If there's existing aerial infrastructure, then we'll follow the existing pole lines and the existing, generally the power service to the house. So if it's coming off of the pole line to the heat of the house, we'll follow that same route.
Okay.
If it's already buried, then we bury it.
Thank you. You know what might help is if you guys unpin the commission chambers on the Zoom so that you can see our heads instead of yourselves. Thank you.
And maybe do gallery view.
Should normally do that.
Okay.
So
while we've got you here, so this franchise agreement, you said it's not urgent, but it just, why do we need it all? I mean, what is?
So we have one with every other municipality that we operate in, and it's generally just, it's an operating agreement for being in your right of ways as a communications provider. And so we actually probably have one with the county from clear back in 2009 when we bought Precis and went through the process of getting franchise agreements for video and internet systems way back in 2009. But we are now operating in Moab and Grand County as I don't want to get it wrong. It's a new LLC. It's a new entity, but it's eFiber Moab LLC, and so we probably need the operating agreement to be in the company name that we're operating under.
So I'll move that we postpone this item until we get attorney review for it.
there's been a motion on the floor to postpone this item until attorney review. Do I have a second? Seconded by Evan. Discussion. See none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously.
So thanks for the presentation.
That was very
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And the other thing I'll say is that as things change and progress, I'm happy to come in as frequently as you would like. And I just want to make sure that we're good partners. And so if there are any issues, by all means, I just want to make sure that we keep the communication open because this is a big construction project.
It is. It's an
not a $50
exciting.
million project.
Very
Well, that's between the two counties. So, yeah. Ready? Thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now to ratify. ratification. Yeah. No, we're to approval of minutes. We haven't approved minutes yet, so we are to the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for May 3rd. Is that what you want from May 3rd? And is it, you want me to just throw it all together from our regular meeting, May 3rd, and the special meeting from May 2nd, noise workshop?
Okay, we have a motion by Tricia Dean. Do I have a second? Second by Kevin. Discussion. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye, raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to ratification of payment of bills. Ratification, go ahead.
So I move that we approve the payment of bills in the amount of $765,014.05 for the bills, $327,514.92 for the payroll, and the grand total is $1,092,528.97.
Motion by Kevin Walker. Do I have a second? Seconded by Evan Clapper. Discussion. Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we are to our, boy, I don't see it, we haven't done.
Yeah, so commissioner reports.
Disclosure. Commissioner, do we have any members of the commission that have disclosures for items on this agenda? Okay, then we will move to general commission reports and future considerations. Jacques.
Thanks, Mary. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. I attended a responsible rec meeting on Friday the 6th, which involved, we talked about Anna, who is the new responsible rec in charge of that program. The main takeaway was that she has been coordinating with some of the more popular app makers that do trail apps, such as All Trails, and she is working with those organizations to have some sort of responsible rec messaging, or like a quiz or a questionnaire that they have to answer before being able to use those apps for finding trails in the Moab area, among other things. I think that's a great step, and hopefully goes a long way towards getting the responsible rec messaging out. We also had a discussion about expanding the program to motorized communities down the road. Last Tuesday, I attended a trail mix meeting. A few that we discussed a new trail proposal for a while. There was a hiking trail. And we also discussed creating a new logo for Trail Mix to kind of keep things straight. I think it's been a little bit confusing lately for people exactly where Trail Mix fits into things. So we talked about that also at the Trail Mix meeting. I attended the about 3 hours of the drive-by noise testing out on Cane Creek and at the cemetery, and that was really interesting to see that testing taking place and how it was done. And like Christine, I think a big takeaway from that is that speed is definitely noisy. The faster vehicles were moving absolutely increased the noise from those. So enforcing speed limits, I think, would go a long way towards helping out with the noise problem. The same day on Thursday, I attended the Motorized Trail Committee meeting. We talked about a couple of aspects of the general plan that affected trail building, in particular building on slopes. And I think we had Cliff, the chair of that group, had an email conversation with John, and I think those issues were addressed in the plan that we'll see today. And on the same day, I also met with some representatives of the county and the Chamber of Commerce to discuss some TRT uses and just kind of clear the air about some things involving that. It was a very productive meeting, and I think went a long way towards promoting understanding there. And that's about it for me. And I don't feel that good, so I probably won't be speaking that much at this meeting. Thank you.
Get well soon. Sarah?
Hello, thanks, Mary. Let's see, I'm pulling up my notes. Oh yeah, so I had a fever and had to miss the quarterly catastrophic fire meeting, but instead I had a very informative sit down with just Jason Johnson from Forestry, Fire and State Lands and Bruce Jenkins, our fire warden. And we discussed many aspects of the state catastrophic fire program. Some projects in Grand County were awarded some of the catastrophic fire money. And that project is specifically in Castle Valley, I believe the upper 80. It's going to be on private land, tying in some of the fuels reduction work that was done on the BLM land up around there with private land to create more of a complete fire break in that pinyon juniper zone. And that's about it for me.
Thank you. Josie?
Yeah, I've had a quiet couple of weeks here. It's a couple meetings I'm still having trouble getting information for. But I did attend the, oh, hi. And my daughter just walked in the door. I did attend the John Curtis Town Hall as well as the dinner proceeding. And that was very good to have some one-on-one conversation with one of our congressional representatives. Phil Lyman was also in attendance. And so, talking to John about things specifically of importance to Grand County, things like housing, I think was probably the number one topic of conversation. And the town hall was a little sparsely attended. So hopefully the next time that comes around, there will be a little bit more activation around that. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Kevin?
I think some of the meetings I've attended the past couple of weeks were already covered by our other commissioners. So I thought I would spend my time on a future consideration instead. I'm just wondering if I've discussed with some of you the idea of having departments come and report through the year, like what they're doing, just to give a general idea. I know there are parts of the county administration and government that I'm not very clear on, even though I've been in office for a year. So I was just wondering if other commissioners think that would be, a good use of our presentation time at meetings, whether we could work with Mallory and the staff to start getting those happening, maybe
More than their yearly reports? You want more than their yearly reports?
Well, you mean like during the budget, or I've been here a year. I don't recall a yearly report from those.
We have a placeholder. I think we heard from the Planning Commission or PNC not too long ago, but I don't think that all the departments have, I'm not sure what the rotation's like.
But I know we've had them in the past.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go through since COVID, which everything got a little confusing, but we've usually had yearly reports from all the departments. But maybe what we need to do is make sure that gets back on the schedule. Yes?
Yes, I think the intention is to have yearly reports from every department. And I think those were going along and it was quite rigid that it happened before COVID.
It was very rigid.
And so we've talked about that internally about getting that back onto a schedule and getting those scheduled. It's in progress.
Okay, and do they happen throughout the year, or are they all concentrated in one?
No, they usually happen throughout the year. So that,
yeah. So that's what I was asking.
1 or 2 presentations per commission meeting.
Yeah, we try to keep it at 1 so the meeting doesn't.
Okay, that sounds like exactly what I was suggesting. I just didn't realize that it was usually happens and just got interrupted by COVID.
Yes, in progress, getting it back on track.
Thank you. So, okay, Evan?
Yeah, so I met with the Cemetery District Board last week, and one of the exciting things happening out there is there's consideration of building a shelter and kind of gathering place because with increased events and kind of use of the parks, there's not a lot of opportunity for folks to kind of go elsewhere for a celebration of life or something after a funeral. And so it just kind of was it hasn't been part of the long range plan. And so it's kind of starting to be explored now. And so that was an exciting thing that's being discussed there. There was also a funeral for a young man in his early 20s that it was reported anecdotally that it was the largest attended funeral since the staff has been there. So the community is using that space, and it's a kind of sober reminder of how much is happening out there. I also attended the health district, and that was informative for me. I'm still kind of getting my feet under there, and there's lots of other agencies besides our own care center that receive funding from them. And so just kind of learning the ins and outs of the seed money and other non-local districts that we're involved with there. So that's a great group and very informative. This morning I met with the EMS, and I think Sarah's just comments about wildland fires and kind of that season and being prepared. One of the big takeaways for me that I thought was relevant to this body was, in reflecting on the Pack Creek fire and the Cinema Court fire, is that a lot of times electeds will kind of be tapped on or be part of that initial response, and that there is training available for appointed and elected officials from ICS, the Incident Command Service or structure, and those are available online. There's also like a Utah Train Utah site or something like that. But there were it was kind of highlighted that there's a lot of struggle around communication and getting information out to citizens and the public around not just incidences like fire, but there was also a water main break today out on Cane Creek, and just kind of letting people know what's going on and what's happening, and that there's kind of potential breakdowns in those sort of systems and who has access to alerting folks. The group that seems the most relevant to address some of these or to work on that is the radio task force. Our own county emergency response, I'm forgetting Jen's official title. She also doubles as our dispatch. She's kind of
Emergency manager.
Yeah. She's kind of tasked with a lot of that for our organization. EMS and fire have their own emergency coordinator. So, trying to get everybody working on the same stuff with that. And there's still room for improvement there. So excited about the possibility of those things. I'm glad those conversations are happening, and continue to kind of nudge things in that direction. And just wanted to bring up the fact that there was opportunity for us as electeds to kind of learn more about being prepared and familiar with those systems. Not should an incident occur, but when the next incident occurs, that we kind of know the lingo and our roles and how to partner with other organizations, who the players are in the area, and being prepared, and so that we can be useful for our citizens.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and the Arches Special Service District for Thursday meeting has been postponed until the next regular scheduled one next month. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have just a couple quick things. I went to a planning commission meeting. We continue to talk really diligently about alternative dwellings, as you know, for our workforce. So that is on the table right now. The ADU kind of reworkings of that ordinance had been submitted for legal review, and we will be seeing that soon. There was a public hearing for Red Rock development, and the Planning Commission motioned or sent an unfavorable recommendation to County Commission. You guys will hear about that coming up. Went to a conservation district meeting. The only thing that stuck out there is they have approximately $2,000 in funding to give out for, you know, anybody that it would fit that bill. I went to a meeting out at OSTA, the advisory committee. They just gave updates on the site. As always, Angie is doing a lot of amazing things out there and constantly kind of keeping that facility functioning. Lots of community events, which is really cool. You know, there's softball, there's soccer. It just seems like it's going great guns out there. This summer, there's going to be a child nutrition program. So all kinds of things. We talked about pickleball, as always. There's never an agenda without pickleball. But anyways, that matching grant is at play, and so they're working on that. The Grand County Homeless Council met. The April numbers, 166 individuals receiving services related to homelessness. Of those individuals, 67 are literally homeless in April, and 93 in imminent danger of homelessness. And future considerations, and this is something I've already reached out to Christina and Jacques and Sheriff White, kind of talking about just the concept of fentanyl within our community and how devastating it is. And can we be a leader in the state as far as education, hardening sentencing for fentanyl possession and distribution? I just think, I know the sheriffs have been making some huge busts that relate to fentanyl, but it is devastating for this community. And so just something to kind of throw out. And, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I attended the Travel Council meeting. We had a presentation from Kate Thompson about the timed entry, and they said it's going very well, and that the exit interviews that they're having with people is very positive. People are very happy that they, you know, some of them that she read to us were people who came before the timed entry, and what an improvement their visit was this time. They have been able to increase the availability of reservations offered for the same day entry, because they're finding there's a number of more than they anticipated no-shows in the afternoon. So now they're offering, so that now they have, you know, they're still being conservative. So if they show up, but they're allowing people more reservations for same day. And that's going really well. There wasn't the increase of people entering before and after hours like anticipated, which was interesting. And but it's going very well. They were very favorable of that. We also got a presentation from Ben that was very interesting on statistics that are happening in Moab as far as rates and such. This year, the average occupancy of the motels was down from last year from 73.9% is what this year, and last year it was 79.4. They're not sure if it's price of gas or have they overbuilt? You know, are they not having as many people stay in the motels and such? So it was down a little bit. Everybody noticed there was quite a bit of down, that the Jeep Safari wasn't as busy as it is usually. You know, let me see, I'm trying to get through these. The average daily rate is up though. So we're bringing in as much or more TRT than we were in the year before. Visiting to the MIC, the Moab Information Center, will probably be up quite a bit this year from last year, because already in 2022, they've had 22,326 people visit the MIC, while through the entire year of, which was the height over the last, since 2017, was 2018, was 25,000. So we're going to hit a record of people, and a lot of it's because of the timed entry. That's where they have some people from the Park Service to help people with timed entry. So that's part of the reason they think that it's increased. The visitor center's opened again at the Arches, and they're starting to see an increase in people going there, and that we are one of the more hot spots for visiting in the nation, but California and Texas have more visitation than we do. So it was interesting. I'm not sure if Ben sent you all this information, but I will forward it to everybody because it's quite interesting. Let me get back to my things. We had a HASU meeting, and Caitlin's here, and you'll hear stuff from her. And it was, as usual, there are a lot of people hunting, more people wanting rentals than availability of low-term income housing than there are. But the Arroyo Crossing project is moving ahead quite well. I've had many meetings on the process of finding a new director of the Canyonland Solid Waste Authority and how to separate the functions while we find a new director. So that has taken up a huge amount of my time. I also went on a tour with John Curtis at the UMTRA project. It was very, very exciting. I hadn't been on a tour there for a year or so, 2 years, I think, and to see the progress is very exciting. So that's my report. Now, how to get back to my agenda. There we are. So we are to elected official reports. Do we have any elected officials that would like to report?
Sorry, thanks. We just finished up the audit, or the auditors came last week. I shouldn't say we finished it up because there will be a sort of continuing dialogue with them. But then it was our first year with Larson as our auditor. And as far as we can tell, it went well. I think that they're probably taking this first year to learn our books and our processes here. So from what I understand, it looked a little bit different than it had in years past when we had an auditor that that we had for 15 years or so. Yeah, Smewin. And otherwise, we're getting our ballots, I think, tomorrow for the June primary. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but up on the website, also in the case here outside the chambers, is a sample ballot for the upcoming primary. Due to new state law, I had to post those 45 days before that election. So if anyone's curious to see what that looks like.
And there's just one race on the.
Two Republican races for House of Representatives and Senate. Yep. Okay. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Administration, Commission Administrator reports.
I guess that's me.
That's you.
At this point. Not a whole lot to report. A lot of meetings we attended over the last couple of weeks. The big thing we wanted to point out is we rolled out a new agenda. It's all online now. We've had mostly positive feedback, not 100%, but mostly positive. And we're going to try and move forward to a system where different departments can submit items to go on the agenda themselves. And hopefully that will even further streamline the process. So we're open to any other feedback you guys have.
I was just gonna say to the point of having like a PDF to reference after the fact. I wonder if day of, when it's like meeting time, if then the PDF could be generated.
We've talked about that. There is a way to, within the website, export the entire thing, but it does export it as 42 different PDFs. So
I don't know if that would be useful.
I don't know, if it is, but it could be then combined. We'll see. We've definitely heard that. So
Yeah, I do want to echo what I said, Remy. I think it is useful to have just one big PDF. So hopefully that can be an option in the future.
We'll see what we can do. Also got like 15 windows open right now. It's like
I know, it's hard for me to find where I'm at.
Can I jump in? There was one thing I forgot to say. I mentioned the ballots. I just noticed for it today, but next Friday, that's the 27th, there's going to be a public logic and accuracy test. And that's the process whereby we take those, we test the ballots basically through our ballot processing machines, and that's open to the public, and we encourage the public to attend if they're curious or interested in how we go through that process on election day.
Thank you. Thank you. Christina, did you have anything you wanted to report on?
Is that to me?
Yes, Christina.
Okay. Yes, I will do a little bit more on the noise stuff. Let me just start my video. So as we discussed with we just finished up the second week of the noise enforcement training with the sheriff's office. The sheriff was there for a lot of it. He sent 1 sergeant and 2 deputies. We got through a lot of good stuff, and I think we worked through some of their hurdles with the way they would statutorily cite things under statute versus local ordinance support statute. They were very receptive to some of the information. We started even by providing an overview of all the noise comments and complaints we've received from the community for the last couple of years. That was news to a lot of these folks in the sheriff's office. Also, an overview of the entire statutory framework, even within HB 146. The good thing about HB 146 is it did bless our noise ordinance, and it blessed noise ordinance enforcement and law enforcement, since it's in such a bizarre little place in statute. And they're dealing mostly with the traffic code, for example, or different criminal codes, but certainly not this this other place over here in civil law. They didn't even realize that the state statute now has blessed noise ordinance enforcement. So that was a big hurdle to move through with those guys. We did 3 different segments of actual noise measurement data collection on the streets. And that was very interesting. You guys have already heard a lot of that. We also discussed tools that, of course, we do want to be enforcing the noise ordinance. As Les said at the time, noise ordinance is the cause, it's the root of the issue. And some of the other things, say like speed enforcement, are really treating the symptom. If all you're doing is enforcing the OHV speed limit, you're still not treating the cause, and it's really important to treat the cause as well. But we also went through a lot of other tools they do have, like the speed limit enforcement. There are noise suppression equipment requirements. There's licensing and registration, of course. They actually do pull over a lot, about 20 a month or so, of unlicensed or unregistered ATVs. Those ATVs have no right to be on our street. So one tool we discussed was impounding ATVs. And actually one of our deputies impounded a non-licensed ATV for the first time this weekend after the noise training. That was Deputy Jameson Wiggins, who was part of the week with us. And so the good news is I did feel a lot of receptiveness from the sheriff's office, and that's really helpful. People have started communicating more directly with Sheriff Steve White and Chief Deputy Daryl Meekum, and I think that's really important to keep doing that. I'm making a point to forward all of our noise comments also to our 2 sheriff candidates, because they need to be aware of this issue. So I do hope to see, more enthusiasm, moving forward, a little bit more action out of the sheriff's office on some of these issues. I also discussed with them how important communication is with the community and with you guys. They are pulling over ATVs. They are citing ATVs for different things, not noise so far, but for other issues. And we just need to hear about it. So I have asked for them to provide a report for us by the end of May that would show us sort of the work they've done this spring on those issues, and encourage them to do, you know, quarterly, biannually, whatever makes sense for them, reporting to the commission on all the big work they're doing. Those guys are super busy, so we can appreciate that. Drive-by enforcement does take 2 bodies, but the person running the noise meter does not have to be post-certified law enforcement. So Josh Green was also there and was really great throughout the week. He's someone that could run a noise meter. If we hired a civil enforcement officer inside the sheriff's office, that'd be another way to have a second body. We could bring Les back, or we've talked about even potentially extending his trip this week, but I just haven't been able to focus on it and doing more enforcement. So there's also, you know, options moving forward to do more noise enforcement with 2 bodies where only 1 is law enforcement. So overall, a great week, and glad to get that second training done, and we'll see where we go from here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are now to general business and action items. The first one is a moratorium of understanding with the Utah Division of Water Rights. Commissioner Stocks.
All right, so this is just an MOU for the agreement that Grand County will be a cooperator in ongoing operations and maintenance costs of the Pat Creek stream gauge. We've discussed this a little bit, but the Pat Creek stream gauge will help with a couple different things. It's really important to help us understand how much water is actually coming into the valley, into that valley fill aquifer from Pat Creek. We don't have that information yet, so it's integral for developing a water budget model for the future. And it'll also help with flood warnings. And yeah, are there questions about this? It's going to be an ongoing cost to the county.
No, I don't have questions, Sarah, but maybe just to kind of outline the other entities that are involved with this, right? So I think you might know better than me, but the Nature Conservancy, who else is helping out? It's quite a few agencies or organizations.
I know Grand Water and Moab City are involved, and I'm not sure about San Juan County or SitLab, though I had heard. I know there's more than I listed.
Yeah, so there's quite a few. I think it's key, like that gauge actually has, you can have an app on your phone and be getting flood warnings. And I know it was really key when that flooding was occurring on Pat Creek. Gary Wilson pointed out that without that, he had water into his horse stalls. And so I think it's just great overall. But plus we know what's going to be going down into the valley fill aquifer. So that being said, do you have a question?
No, I was going to make a motion.
Okay. That being said, I'll make a motion. Sorry, I'm pulling it up. Oh, no.
I've got it.
You got it? Okay, go for it.
So I move to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Utah Division of Water Rights for a stream gauge on Pat Creek.
Motion by Kevin.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Trish. Further discussion.
I was just going to say, we've over multiple meetings over the past year, we've discussed the idea of spending money to better understand our aquifer, and I think this is part of that. So this is, it's not some sudden thing. This is and something we've been anticipating for a while.
And I'll make one more comment. Just sorry, Sarah, for the general public to understand that most of Pat Creek disappears right about that bridge when you go up into the community of Pat Creek. And there is the assumption that, the reality that it's recharging the valley fill aquifer. So without knowing the amount of water that's going in, it's a big missing piece of understanding our groundwater.
And just to clarify a little bit, on the agenda summary in the packet, it says the fiscal impact will be like $16,000. That's incorrect. It's $3,208 this year and every year forevermore. Yeah, just to clarify that. Plus, I think cost of living increases or inflation increases.
Any further discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now to Rowdies of the Rock special event permit. Angie?
Hello, everyone. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this event is called Roughies on the Rocks. Roughies on the Rocks, this will be their first event in Moab. It's hosting an IMBA World Finals. IMBA is International Miniature Bull Riding Association. The purpose of miniature bulls is for providing appropriate stock for youth bull riders. Riders will be under the age of 18 and competing for qualifying scores to move on to the finals in Reno, Nevada. There will be an impressive lineup of different categories of bulls, bronc riding, and an intermission stud act. Local youth clubs will be working the event, handling concessions, parking, and arena cleaning. The clubs will be compensated from the event holder with a donation to their club to help pay for travel fees, entry fees, and equipment. This event is a traveling series that will bring those competitors and spectators to Moab. Pending the success rate of this event, the holder has a desire to book an additional 10 events at the arena. The event packet has been reviewed and approved by a special event committee and all referral agencies. Do you have any questions on this event?
Questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Well, I'm going to really quickly state that I just went to a bull riding event this last weekend. Don't ask me. Anyways, out in near Beaver in Minersville, because the world champion bull rider is from Utah, which is pretty impressive, this whole family. And these roughies were there, and it was pretty impressive. The kid that won with the small bulls, and they're not small, was 14, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. It was really a fun event, and so I think it would attract a lot of. There was 4,000 people at this event in Minersville. It was pretty impressive. So I think this is a great event for OSTA. So that being said, I move to approve the special event permit for the 2022 Roughies on the Rocks under the currently approved special event ordinance.
Motion by Trish. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Evan. Discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. It is 6:04. Anyone who has not spoken tonight on Citizens to be Heard and would like to say something for Citizens to be Heard, this is your 6 o'clock opportunity. Do we have anybody online? Doesn't appear to be. So we will move on to, we postponed item C, so we are on.
Sorry, is that the one we moved up?
Well, it's the one we postponed. Item C.
Oh, right.
Okay, bid award and independent contractor agreement with Vortex Firework Artist. Mallory isn't here, so Quinn.
This is the same provider for the fireworks we've had for the last couple of years. Generally, when we put this out to bid, we only get one bid from Vortex. And they've been reliable and easy to work with. So this is approving that contract.
I move to approve the independent contractor agreement with Vortex Fireworks Artists for the 2022 July 4th professional fireworks display.
Motion by Kevin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Evan. Discussion?
I'm considering an encore profession as a fireworks artist. So consider that an upcoming disclosure.
That's cool. That's really neat.
What about bull riding? What about bull riding?
Okay, that too.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously.
No, there was one, I think well.
Did somebody oppose?
It was ambiguous how Josie voted.
Josie, how did you vote?
I was late to the vote and I voted aye, but I was just going to add to the discussion that I know it's rather unpopular, but I know we've gotten at least one comment from a citizen that fireworks may not be the most appropriate thing moving forward with both like fire danger and drought, as well as I think sound issues. And so I know that's not something really to put forth at this point in time, because I think this is just kind of a general community expectation, but I think it's worth noting that just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean that we always should. But I still voted aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Okay, so we are to item bid award to TSJ Constructions for constructing the airport snow removal equipment building in the amount of 800. Is that?
Yeah, 890,000.
Yeah, that looks odd, doesn't it?
It's red, yeah.
Okay, FA share is 95%, Grand County share is 5%. Tammy?
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. So this is, for those of you that are familiar, we receive airport improvement money every year as our entitlement money, and that's $1 million. So this is one of our entitlement projects. The other half of this, or last year's project, was equipment that we received. Now we're getting the building to put that equipment in. So the FAA share is, as Mary said, the $890,000 and $1.29. Grand County share will be the $44,729. This will come out of our CARES grant that we received in 2020. It's nice that we have that grant money to be able to use as our matching costs on these projects. So our only bid came in much higher than anticipated. Even with the growth in costs of everything, it was still much higher than what we'd hoped for. So we were able to trim some of the fat. Not that there was much to trim out, but we were able to change some things, bring that cost down to what it is now. So if you have any questions, please throw them at me.
Questions?
Tammy, do you know how much that is per square foot?
I didn't do the math. The number I heard thrown out there is about $400 a square foot. And with other estimates I've heard out there from other airports, that's about what they're seeing as well.
And what were we expecting the total price to be?
I think it was just under 700,000.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the bid award to TSJ Construction in the amount of $890,001.29 for construction of a snow removal equipment building at the airport, pending the FAA grant offer.
Motion by Kevin. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, second by Trish. Further discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. I think I lost, no, there it is. I lost my agenda for a minute, all these windows. Okay, resolution repealing and replacing resolution number 2976 and adopting the general plan.
I think you missed one, Mary. There's,
Oh, I missed it. I saw airport and I jumped. Oh, we have the skydive, I'm sorry, single service operation agreement between Skydive Moab LLC and Grand County effective January 1st, 2022. Tammy.
Okay, so one of the many different agreements in the airport world are these single service operator agreements. Basically what they are is an agreement for each individual business at the airport, stating what their operations will be, how they will perform them, and their different operating procedures. What this, the benefit of this is that everyone on the airport knows what each other is doing, rather than, hey, are they, you know, are they supposed to be flying that way, or, you know, are the skydivers supposed to land there? This just kind of helps regulate, you know, the different areas of the airport, what they're used for, who's using them. If you look down in here, it goes into a bunch of different other things, their obligations, all their different responsibilities, procedures, airspace operations. There's a whole list of things covered in here. This is something that Andy worked on with Christina before he left. And it was quite the process to get this done. But now that we've got this done, we can continue on with the other operations here at the airport. So you'll see more of these to come. Like I said, this is pretty standard at all airports. Again, it's just to kind of help lay out who's doing what, when, where, how, and why. This one is for Skydive. They've been conducting business on this airport for 15 years. There's not a out-of-pocket cost for this for us, but if you look in the fiscal impact, risk and liability associated with the jump operations at a county airport, given that jump operations are essentially uninsurable. That is the case, and it would be a lot easier to say, well, you can't be insured, so you can't participate out here. However, there are protected aeronautical activity here at the airport, so we're going to have to just kind of take on that liability and do our best with these kind of operating agreements to keep everybody safe. I'll let Christina Sloan put in her 2 cents worth if she wants to add to that.
Yeah, just quickly, and Tammy did a great job summarizing what this does. We have the old agreement with Skydive in the packet. It's a short letter, wholly insufficient. So to say this was a lot of work, this is nearly 4 years in the making, getting to this point. This was a priority of mine as soon as I was sworn in, not just Skydive Moab, but all of these operators out of the airport. They are protected aeronautical classes under federal law, but we do still have the power and authority to regulate in all sorts of ways to preserve health and safety. And so that's what this does. And I think that's it. If you guys have questions, we are here.
so what was, I mean, I left with this vague impression from emails that there was some kind of dispute. Was it just about price, or were there other things?
So the landing area is unimproved aeronautical land that's airside. We don't have in our fee schedule an unimproved land rate for airside property. And so because of that, the only thing we can really do is enforce what we do have, which is the improved land space, or that was my position. And Skydive pushed back and said, no, it shouldn't, it's not the same as a space with a hangar or other improved property, the terminal, et cetera. So it shouldn't be assessed the same way. We did have a meeting with FAA to unpack it. We worked with Armstrong out of Junction to unpack it. The resolution was that we will go through a rent study. Also, all of our rents are super old. We haven't looked at it for at least 5 years. So Armstrong is going to manage a rent study for us that will not only evaluate where all of our rents are for airside property and non-airside, for aeronautical purposes and non-aeronautical purposes, but also on that airside for improved versus non-improved. So that's all built into this operating agreement, that when that rent study is done and when the fee schedule is updated to provide an unimproved land rate, that is what they will pay. So far, all they've been doing is paying for the maintenance on that landing area. This also gives us the ability to relocate the landing area because with the development plans of the airport, that might be necessary. In fact, I think we are planning for that, and Skydive Moab's aware of that. And the other thing that is unique about the landing area, which I didn't realize that the FAA confirmed, is that we can't give them the exclusive right to drop in that landing area because that skydiving is a protected aeronautical class. If another skydive operator came in, they would also have the legal right to use that landing area. So that should affect the rate that they're paying. So all of that's going to be considered in this rent study, and come fee schedule updates in the fall, it'll get integrated, hopefully then if it's done.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
That was my question too, is I just remembered that email exchange.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ready for a motion?
Yes, ready for a motion.
I hate to hog up all the motions, but I've got it right in front of me. If you.
Okay, do it.
I move to approve the single service operator agreement between Skydive Moab LLC and Grand County effective January 1st, 2022.
Motion by Kevin Walker, seconded by
I'll second that.
Trish Hedin. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We have updated airport director job description, recruitment grade range. Renee.
Hi, good evening. So we do have a vacancy in the airport director position. And when we completed the 2021 salary survey for the budget this year, it was noted that the airport director position was graded quite a bit higher than what the salary survey said it should be. And when we have an incumbent in a position like that, we don't decrease their grade at all. So that's what we're kind of asking for now. As far as we did update the job description and remove some of the duties that are on the operations manager's job description, but also kind of propose this range of grades, and placement of the grade would be dependent on the candidate's qualifications and experience as laid out in that updated job description. But that would just give us some negotiating power within a job offer, but also better placement within our salary survey for this position.
So you're saying we're going to save some money?
Yes.
I like that.
We like that, yes.
I don't often ask for us to save money, so.
No, you don't.
Motion or questions? Okay.
I move to approve the updated airport director job description and authorize recruitment posting at the range of grades 18 through 20 effective May 18th, 2022.
Motion by Kevin, seconded by Evan. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. And Renee. And we are to resolution repealing and replacing resolution number 2676 and adopting the general plan to 2030. John.
Thank you, Commissioner McGann, and good evening, everyone, or afternoon, whatever it is.
So this is a culmination of almost a year-long process. I know it doesn't seem that long. It's been so much fun. And it really is a top-down approach, and taking a look at a lot of the strategic thinkers in the county, including the commissions, both planning commission and county commission, and people that are, major decision makers. We've missed some, of course, but we've tried to keep this pretty close to a top-down approach to draft a gap analysis and an implementation strategy. The next step, so you've received a number of feedback. You have all of that in your package, which I won't go over because I think should be fairly self-explanatory. We did have a bit of some questions around trails and how they impacted environmentally sensitive areas. So I think we've addressed those concerns. And I've included a couple of other typos that were in there, and there's a track changes document that's attached. There is the next step here, just to say that I realize it's not part of the motion, is to move ahead with implementation. And our goal is to do implementation with department heads, and then to the planning commission in June, and hopefully to the council, the county commission in June. That might be a bit too compressed. And then to start neighborhood planning at the same time. So it's a busy time of the year, and we might have to gauge that on how that goes. But the neighborhood planning process would take about a year and a half, go through 3 phases, and would update the major decision-making parts of the general plan and other substantive areas of the general plan. So I don't know if there's any other questions or concerns or comments. I think it's not a perfect document. Obviously, it's got lots of gaps in it, and the implementation will be very important.
Questions?
Yeah, I know we've discussed this a little bit before, but since we're about to vote on the plan, it might be a good time to do it again. So my understanding is one of the functions of this is some kind of meta plan that's giving us some kind of roadmap for planning we're going to be doing in the future. Those are the gaps. Am I correct?
That's what we've been kind of beating that drum, I think, for a while now, Kevin. And
okay.
I know you're on the steering committee with Mary, and we're revisiting a lot of the implementation strategies on Thursday. The land use sections, just to feed off of what you've asked, I think, the land use section will be completely updated and changed because it needs a lot of work, hopefully in June or July, along with the book lists reference. And the transportation master plan adoption process we're shooting for is August, which has got a consultant working on it. So you'll be seeing a report back to you on that. The capital improvement plan, which I think is with Chris right now, will be coming out hopefully this year. The economic development master plan is another one. You can only do so many of these at one time. And then we're working on a public engagement strategy internally. Those are 5 major areas. And then there's a number of other implementation plan ideas, which we'll be bringing back to you.
Okay, so thanks. And so that means if there's, in particular, in the land use section here, it mentions something about bones, like base densities, and then can go up by 60% if certain conditions are met. Is that just a placeholder at this point, and we're going to refine that and revise it later? Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so now is not the time to discuss the details of that part of the general plan.
Yeah, if you can avoid discussing the details, that'd be great. Although they're important, of course, but.
Okay, but they're going to be revised, so we shouldn't get hung up on any details that are in here right now.
Right. The other thing we're doing right now is redrafting the whole land use code with a new code, the Unified Development Code. So you'll be seeing a lot of that as we go through those sections.
Any other questions? I entertain a motion.
I've got it in front of me. Okay. I move to approve the resolution repealing the General Plan 2012 and adopting the Grand County General Plan 2030.
Motion by Trish Dean. Do we have a second? Seconded by Evan Clapper. Discussion?
I did have one question. So that 2030 is not a typo. That's what we're calling this, because it's going to last us until 2030? Because in some places it says 2022. I guess.
Yeah,
got a little
so
bit
yeah, I think the resolution actually says 2022. So that even though the resolution is, the resolution you're making right now is the date, but we're calling it somewhat of a visionary plan. It probably should be 20 years, but it's going to be completely redacted within the next 2 or 3 years. So we didn't want to go out there too far.
Okay, so 2030 was some kind of compromise between
Yeah.
2022 and 2040. Is that
That's
the
right.
spot between the?
Good question, that is.
I just wanted to make a comment that I appreciate added language around noise, seasonal housing, and renewable energy goals by 2030. And so I appreciate those being focus points and hope they will continue to be in implementation.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Is your hand raised for opposition, Sarah, or was that in favor?
In favor.
Okay, passed unanimously. Okay. We are to item I, adopting resolution approving final plat lot 7 amended location at 1885 Plateau Circle, affecting parcel number 02-OSPE-0007. Alicia.
Thank you. Okay, this is the Plateau Estates, right? That's what we're on right now. Okay. Just making sure.
You haven't memorized the numbers?
Yeah, it's all good. The submission by applicants Sheena Gardner and Kevin Gerber is for a plat amendment to subdivide the parcel located at 1885 Plateau Circle in the Plateau Estates subdivision, which was originally approved in 1996 and consisted of 7 lots. The property is within the large lot residential zone, which requires a minimum lot size of ½ an acre. Currently, the property consists of 1 single-family dwelling and a detached garage on 1.15 acres. The proposed 2-lot subdivision would create a 0.56 acre parcel and a 0.58 acre parcel. The subject property is located along Plateau Circle Road, a county road that is already constructed to county's construction standards. No roadway improvements are required and no right-of-way dedication will be needed. Lot 7B is accessed via the flagpole portion of the parcel. A drainage waiver has been approved by the county engineer and no additional site improvements are required. All utilities as well as WISA have provided will serve letters. The plat amendment is consistent with the county's general plan and land use code Article 5, lot design standards, Article 7, subdivision standards, and Article 9, administration and procedure. Staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving the final plat of Plateau Estates, Lot 7 amended. Questions?
Questions?
Sorry, did you say this did go before the planning commission?
No, since we revised our Article 9 administration procedures, the preliminary plat gets approved by the planning and zoning department, and then final plat only needs to come to county commission.
Yeah. So I move to approve the findings of fact set forth in the staff report dated March 28th, 2022, and the proposed resolution approving plat for Plateau Estates Lot 7 amended.
Motion by Kevin.
Second.
Seconded by Evan. Discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No. Passes unanimously. Thank you. We are to adopting resolution approving the final plat of Arroyo Crossing Phase 1, Track 1, amended effective parcel 020ARR-0241.
The applicant is the Moab Area Community Land Trust, and the request is to amend the Phase 1 plat for Arroyo Crossing. which was originally approved in October of 2019 and subsequently amended by a correction plat in June 2021. This plat amendment would subdivide tract I into 4 parcels. 2 would be 0.9 acre and 2 would be 0.8 acre, creating approximately 3,900 square foot lots. The subject property fronts Bonnie's Way and Nighthawk Lane, 2 private roads that are already constructed to county construction standards. No roadway improvements are required and no right-of-way dedication will be needed. Drainage and civil plans were approved by the county engineer as part of phase 1 final plat, and all improvements are completed and approved. All utilities, including GWSSA, have provided will serve letters. The subdivision is consistent with the Grand County General Plan by being part of the approved Arroyo Crossing PUD, which provides a 20% affordable housing set aside. The plat amendment application and final plat is consistent with the approved Arroyo Crossing PUD and master plan, Article 4 planned unit developments, Article 7 subdivisions, and Article 9 administration procedures. Staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving the final plat of Arroyo Crossing Phase 1 Tract I amended.
Questions?
So is this some minor change of plans, or this was always in the plan to?
This was always in the master plan for the PUD, but Tract I was kind of just set aside to be subdivided at a later time. So
Because they weren't sure whether it was going to be 3 or 4 lots, or?
I think there was some ambiguity, and I think it was kind of based on whether they had the funding developer ready to build.
Is that right, Sherry? Do you want to answer that? Okay.
If you're going to come up here.
In the original approval, there were a few of those tracks that they did not get subdivided because we weren't sure how developers were going to want to use that. They were counted in our final numbers, and so they have to, we're still going to make sure that they're the same number of houses in there. In this case, it's twin homes, but they just didn't get their lot lines cut.
Thank you.
Okay. I move to approve the findings of fact set forth in the staff report dated April 18th, 2022, and the proposed resolution approving the final plat of Arroyo Crossing Phase 1, Tract 1 amended.
Motion by Kevin.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Trish. Discussion?
No, I just want to thank you, Sherry, for all you've done out there, and Caitlin for all you're doing out there. It's greatly appreciated.
It's really fun to drive by and see. It took us so long. It took us so long. And thank you for your stick-to-itiveness that you stayed there through the long haul. Really appreciate it. It's really cool. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're getting down there. We are to work change directive from the Sand Flats gravel parking lot. Andrea Brand.
Yes, hi. I was trying to see if I can share my screen here. Does someone have to let me share it, or there we go?
We can see it. We can see it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, you're sharing.
All right, very good, thank you. So you may recall that I came before you at the end of last year and then again this spring for approval for an expansion of the parking lot at the corner of Sand Flats Road and the old dump road or Potato Salad Hill access. And so we started, you folks approved Harrison Oilfield oil services for that project. And in this picture, you might remember that it's down in the lower left-hand corner there. That was the original parking lot. Construction started early this spring. And just a few pictures of that. Bulldozer got rid of a lot of that big hill there. And here is the parking lot. And then this is in time for Jeep Safari. So there's some items on the directive here that have actually already been completed. And that is addressing a hump at the entrance. So there had to be some elevation changes so that the culvert, there wouldn't be a hump over that culvert. We also had a few issues with some of the plans that were posted. And so that was fixed. And then the boulders, we thought we'd get more boulders from the excavation, but we didn't. So I worked with Evan Tyrell at the landfill, and he was good enough to give us a lot of boulders so we could line that. And I got the area seeded. And so what I'm coming to you for this evening, oh, one other thing is the extra fill, as we had proposed, was brought up to Baby Lion's Back. So we have a nice entrance to that now, and also some additional parking there for people with fill that was left over from the project. And then right now, what I'm coming before you about is some of the other items on the work change directive, which is the asphalt radius at the approaches due to the longer culverts in the final plans versus the preliminary plans, insulation of concrete box and grate. One of these boxes actually is provided to us by the Grand County Road Department. They had as an extra that wasn't being used. And then also just extending the culverts. This is the bottom part. There's going to be a concrete box that would go in here. That was not in the original design from the engineers. And then in this one, this will have a culvert, additional pipe about 50 feet long in here to join these two together. And there will be an opening though for a box on top, a concrete box with a grate. And then the boulders will be moved more along the road. And so this includes the materials, the install, and the backfill. The additional cost is $18,895 for these changes. And just as a side note, this project was originally approved as 114,000, but then it came in at 101 with the contract. But now with these changes, we're up to almost 120,000 total. So it's really only about a $6,000 change overall. Anyway, any questions? Thank you.
So Andrea, that's in your budget, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions for Andrea? I would entertain a motion. Kevin.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, let me take this one.
I was going to, despite all the recent practice I've had, I think Evan does a better job of making motions than I do. So I'm going to defer to him for the rest of the meeting.
I move to approve the work change directive for the Sand Flats gravel parking lot and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents, keeping it old school.
Great. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
And I have a second by Mary, and a motion by Evan. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passed unanimously. I'm going to let Mary take back over.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay, amending economic development special event grant guidelines.
You notice how August just slides in like that was pretty slick.
Oh, he
It's
does.
the YouTube secret.
Oh, I just guessed.
You don't want to sit in those uncomfortable chairs for.
Catching up on email, I can't do it from here. Well, not as well, at least. Can't eat good. I can start by maybe just reading the background that we have here. So I feel like a good place to start with this section. Yes, okay, I'm gonna do that. So it's agenda item L, amending economic development special event grant guidelines. Background here is that our department is requesting that we amend the guidelines for our event grant program and approve, well, I guess it's the second agenda item, so I'll pause on that. The
event advertising grant program has been run by our department in its past format as the Travel Council for at least a decade, if not longer, and it's shifted and changed over time. It's designed to develop new special events, give financial support to encourage visitation to the Moab area, and it has changed from being an annual thing to the most recent iteration before this proposed amendment is targeting November, December, January, February. It's been something that the event guidelines have been updated since 2016. In general, there's been changes to how we want this program to operate going forward. There will be more changes, but the high level is that in the last year, the Travel Council Advisory Board has met and decided on a couple events and grants that they want to approve. And in that process, kind of identified some things that need to be changed within the event guidelines first before we can move to kind of approve those grants, and just a couple kind of housekeeping issues that we wanted to update in the guidelines. I think you will see this program back when we do kind of a larger revision in the future. I would imagine that we're going to probably split this into kind of how this program has worked historically, and then maybe more of a community-facing event program. And I can talk more about that in agenda item M. But the kind of bigger picture changes in here include a change in the target months. So before November, December, January, February were the only months eligible for the event grant funding. We're changing that language to be more flexible. So quote, targeted low visitation periods of the year. So that allows us to look at, okay, maybe during the season, we already have the capacity, everybody's hired on, but this one weekend in April or this one weekend in July, for whatever reason, is super low. And that we can kind of be, creating kind of policy scalpels rather than cudgels. And, rather than saying, well, it has to be in this kind of corner of the year, allows us to look at our occupancy data and be a little bit more targeted. So it doesn't prescribe certain times of the year. It also doesn't prescribe when they don't want to run this program. But I think that those conversations will be had in other venues. Additionally, the application timeline, typically annually applications are due in August for events to take place in the following year. We've added an exemption that allows the board and our office to award grants outside of that normal application timeline in the case of extenuating circumstances. In this case, pandemic made planning difficult. And so the timeline, some flexibility there for one of the event grants. And then lastly, the previous grant had a strict restriction that funds must be spent 100% on marketing and 70% on marketing out of state. As we've worked with event applicants, it's been clear that that doesn't serve the event all the time, although clearly if you're doing marketing, that can be useful, but sometimes operating expenses are useful to get an event off the ground. And there's no explicit statutory requirement. This has to be advertising funds, just so long as it established, develops, and promote kind of a tourism activity. It's an eligible TRT expense in that kind of classic tourism promotion category. Hashtag classic TRT. Our department is asking the county commission to approve the amended guidelines that are attached to this agenda item.
So in number 2 under criteria in the guideline, most of the places Moab Area Travel Council has been struck and you replace it with EDD.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen in the second sentence of number 2. Is that intentional or did you just miss that one?
That might have just been a miss.
Okay. So
I'll note that.
Make the motion. Mention that. And then who makes the final decisions on these grants?
So the way that the process works is that they apply to our office. We kind of review and vet based on guidelines and kind of say, well, we think this might be a good fit. It then goes to the Travel Council Advisory Board, who meets and will interview the candidates and have some questions and determine whether or not it feels like a good fit based on the goals and categories. And then ultimately the grant dispersal.
Okay, so it comes to us eventually.
Coming to you in the next agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a screening level. It's recommended by the Travel Council Advisory Board, and they do a lot of the legwork.
Okay.
But it doesn't get spent without seeing the commission.
I had a quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
In reviewing this, a few other questions came up, and maybe you kind of answered my question because you said more changes to this program might be in order in the future. But I wondered if y'all had thought about, since you're broadening the timeline, did you all consider exemptions for the time frame for events that encourage diversification? Two events that come to mind are like the Powwow and Moab Pride, which both provide really important regional like connectivity for minorities. So I don't know, is that on your radar at all to think about broadening this program, or is it pretty narrow in scope?
So your thought would be that, adding some carve out or element of this grant program that could help to support new events that are really focused on not like economic diversification, but increased diversity of activity, in addition to like inducing visitation. Is that the thought?
Yeah, I guess events that serve minority type populations. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, so in the past, no, I hear what you're saying. In the past, so if you look at subsection 2, there's this like element that says it will quote unquote encourage green practices, events that can demonstrate that they will encourage green practices will be given consideration on the scorecard for their efforts. And that's basically taken out of the previous language. In the future, we could certainly add an element of what you're suggesting in the existing guidelines. Additionally, we could create a separate program or carve out of this program that's really targeted at like, cultural events and developing those kinds. I think that could be a possibility and a part of the conversation for sure.
Yeah, I didn't expect some kind of amendment tonight, but I thought I'd bring it up because as Moab fills up with all kinds of events, it's easy to say Moab's full, but then you look at like May and it's all motorized events that are serving mostly a certain demographic. And I don't want to say Moab's full, sorry, nobody come, but I think it would be a good to focus on increasing the way that we welcome different populations in town and to make funds available for encouraging those kinds of events, especially ones that are so beneficial for people living in rural Utah specifically, and the region.
That's a really good point. And I think we'll bring that. I think the main thing today is just trying to get these grants approved, work, and clean up a couple of things that are clearly needed to be cleaned up in this grant program. And we will revisit this, and I'll make sure that goes to your email so we can make sure we have your input on that.
Well, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Oh, I have another question. Yeah, and this is kind of similar to Sarah's. It's sort of more of a prompt for, I think, further changes and sort of fleshing out of the document. And they're a little bit connected. One, because I appreciate that a lot of the change in language, and so talking about specifically going after quality visitation, but I think it is worth like clarifying a little bit more what we mean by quality visitation and kind of having criteria for that as well. And I think that kind of goes back to Sarah's question too of having a lot of different aspects that might be more like community beneficial or beneficial to unrepresented groups or things like that. But also for like peace of mind of people who live here and having events that generally give us more peace of mind rather than less peace of mind. And then my other prompt, which kind of dovetails on that, is the participant survey that's required with the grant. I think that could be a really good opportunity to ask some more of those like qualitative questions around like quality of events desired or things that people liked or disliked about an event as far as those kinds of qualities as opposed to just like sort of economic benefit numbers. So those would be kind of my two additions for things to expand a little bit more on.
Awesome. Yeah, so I would say that where we're at process-wise, and John alluded to this earlier, we have in that economic development master plan that's budgeted, we have someone providing technical assistance is in town this Friday to help us put that RFP together. And so process-wise, what I would like to see us do is throughout the actual master planning process for economic development is thinking what are our goals and objectives, and then how do we achieve those. And so part of those goals is more community, facing events and more kind of welcoming events to different communities that typically aren't kind of welcomed or seen or represented in our visitation landscape, to put it a certain way. Then this event grant program could be a strategy to carry out those goals, and that's how I would like to do that. So I think the event grant program would be revisited after we complete that plan, and I think that would be an outcome of the plan is revise the grant per the new goals. Thanks, Josie.
So Sarah, you wanted to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd make a motion. I move to approve the revised event grant guidelines.
Motion by Sarah Stock. Do I have a second? Seconded by Evan Clapper. Discussion?
And is it understood in Sarah's motion that correction we discussed at the beginning will be part of it? Or is that not actually? Should we worry about that or not?
It's changing travel council to ED. I would say if it's really making an amended motion, we can make that change.
Do you think it matters much when we're?
It'll get changed later.
Okay.
I could interpret that as the travel council advisory board for now. But good enough.
I'm happy to make an amended motion.
I think it'd be quicker just to vote on this motion.
Okay, all in favor of motion? Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thanks for all your work on this.
Yes, that's great. So we are to Economic Development Grant Awards, August.
Awesome. Again, I'll give a quick overview. So now that we've amended these guidelines, I have like to put forth a handful of grants that our office has vetted, the Travel Council Advisory Board has approved to pass on to the Commission for review for a total fiscal impact of $36,700. There's 3 grant programs. The first is the 2021 Folk Festival. So in August of last year, the Folk Festival came to the Travel Council Advisory Board and had conversations with staff, basically saying that during August of 2020, when there was high uncertainty about the feasibility of an event the following year, so far away, given the COVID situation, that they put a pause on applying for this grant program in August of 2020. And so they came back a couple months before the event, which was out of the kind of guideline timeline at the time, but staff had said, this is good. The Travel Council Board said, we should approve this. And now that we've changed the guidelines, it fits within the program as described. That is $10,000 total. That event has happened. They have budgeted for this money. And we're just making good on a promise basically at this point for that one. They also applied for the 2022 Folk Fest at the same time, in typical event timelines of August of 2021 for an event happening in November of 2022 for a grant award of the same amount. And then at the same time, we also got an application for the 2022 free concert series in August of 21 for this summer. So the amounts for each individual event are 10 grand for the 2021 Folk Fest, 10 grand for the 2022 Folk Fest, and $16,700 for the 2022 free concert series. These were approved at the September 14th and December 14th Travel Council Board meetings, minutes of which are attached. We can see where the board voted in approval, and the contracts are also attached with the event organizer's signature. Yeah. So I guess I'm asking for the county commission to approve these grants so that I can go
Questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the dispersal of funds to the Folk Festival and Free Concert Series as recommended by the Travel Council Advisory Board.
Motion by Evan. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by.
He was giving me the eye. Did you see that?
Yes, I saw that. Tricia Dean. Any further discussion?
I would just, in regards to our previous agenda item, did not bring up the fact that I really appreciate the free concert series and the fact that it provides free opportunities for citizens. And so that might be some extra points in future applications for free events.
Awesome. And I should clarify, there is enough money in the budget for all of these items. This is budgeted. So there's no
Within budget.
Needs to change for this.
Any further discussion?
No, I would just reiterate and also agree with both the Folk Fest and the free concert series that I think as far as like quality visitation and very local friendly events, I think these two exemplify those very well.
Call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to resolution repealing resolution number 3,260 and amending resolution number 3,228 and the bylaws of the Economic Development Advisory Board.
Awesome.
Are you going to do this or is Ben?
No, this is me. Ben was in here as a sub. Yeah. Okay. And that he did a lot of work on this, so shouts out to Ben. Background on this in general is that the Economic Diversification Advisory Council was established in December of 2020 and was also approved. Its creation was approved alongside the ratification of the Economic Diversification Action Plan. The intention of that body was to carry out some of the diversification priorities of the county, not limited to the diversification carve out from TRT and thinking about how we should spend that money, although they don't have statutory advisory responsibility from the state to do so. Also to look at planning and zoning impediments to economic diversification, and also to help develop kind of economic development master plan. So those are some of the big goals, generally also focusing on trying to close the gap between cost of living, wages in the county. That board has met for over a year and has led to the creation of the Economic Diversification Grant Program that we have approved and are rolling out this year, and also the allocation of funds for this master plan that we're carrying out this year. The Economic Development Advisory Board was separately created in response to State Senate Bill 95, which created the Rural County Grant Program. The Rural County Grant Program is basically provides a flat grant to every county in the state, $200,000, that we need a board to advise on to help determine what the priorities are and how to spend that money. So this board was created to advise on that grant money. It is statutorily required, and there are statutory requirements for board membership. That also has been meeting for almost 2 years now. In practice, both boards have fairly similar overlapping goals, although maybe different pots of money to think about. And in practicality, has become a lot of kind of administrative burden on our office to do all the agendas and meeting minutes and follow-ups for somewhat duplicative boards. And so we're moving to consolidate these boards, specifically to repeal the resolution that created the Economic Diversification Advisory Council in the first place, and basically bring all active board membership more or less over to the Economic Development Advisory Board and add basically the same mandate and duties in the Economic Diversification Advisory Council to the new and revised Economic Development Advisory Board. Other changes based on feedback from the private sector is adding 2 more private sector representatives to this board. And so there are a couple of positions, including one member of the public that lives in Grand County, that are not going to be filled today, but we'll go through our public appointment process so that there's an opportunity for people who might not be thinking of to apply and be a part of this board. Those are the major changes. One of the other things that we did not carry over to the Planning Commission chair position, which was an ex officio position in the EDAC board. But we're encouraging that individual to be a part of the board as a member of the public. Although we're not appointing that person today, encouraging them to apply. So that's where that stands. So yeah.
Questions?
So this was on the agenda a meeting or 2 ago. So what are the changes since then?
So the main changes since then, the concerns were twofold. One, there was one private sector representative in the language of the board makeup. And so, the chamber reached out and just wanted to make sure that, the goals of the board still made sense based on what what they wanted to see, and to kind of expand representation from the private sector in an economic development body. So in response to those concerns, we added 2 more positions for private sector representation and ensured that any concerns over the goals of the board were met. And so we had a successful meeting with chamber representatives and made those changes.
Okay, so but the actual changes to the bylaws or charter, whatever this is, are adding 2 members, and
That's the main changes. There's a couple other changes within the red line just to clean it up that we noticed after we postponed it. So it turns out it's good to take a little time.
Could you speak a little more about the membership requirements or eligibility?
Yeah, so the statutory requirements in SB 95 for the rural county grant aspect of this board needs to have 1 county representative. It needs to have a representative from the municipality in the county. It has to have a workforce development representative, a private representative, private sector representative, and a member of the public who lives in the county.
What's the difference between private sector and member of the public?
That language is straight out of statute. So I think the intention there is that if maybe I would work for a nonprofit or something in the private sector, but I live in the city,
There's no requirement to work in the tourism industry.
There's not a requirement on this board, and that was one of the things that kind of got brought up in the chamber conversation. So there's not a specific call out for a tourism representative, but I think for the additional private sector representatives, trying to have a broad swath of.
And they don't need to be chamber members.
There is 1 chamber, so I should say that, but those 5 are what's the statute. The actual list of what we're putting on here is greater than that, which includes a chamber representative. So maybe I should just go through what I'm.
No, I was just making sure that the other 5 didn't need to be.
Yeah, there's no chamber requirement. So there is a standing ex officio position for someone from the chamber that's being represented by Lacey. Director of the chamber.
Is this something that we think the attorney should review? Doesn't have her attorney review note on it.
I don't believe that the attorney saw this.
You guys feel it's a binding contract and that sort of. She specifically called out contracts. I don't know if this is necessarily a contract.
These are bylaws, correct?
These are bylaws. They can be changed.
So do you think now that she's here, I can do 1 pending attorney review?
I don't know if it needs attorney review. Does it need attorney review?
I know Mallory and August worked on this for several hours. That's really all I can say about it.
Do we have the attorney on board anymore, or is she?
She's gone.
left the meeting. All right. Well, if she's not here, I'll move to approve the resolution repealing resolution number 3260 and amending resolution number 3228 Economic Development Advisory Board and establish EDAB membership and positions as outlined in Exhibit B.
Second. Motion by Evan, seconded by Kevin. Discussion?
Let the minutes reflect my concern.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? You're going to take off. Commissioner Walker is leaving at this point. And we are to consent agenda, aren't we? Yep. Consent agenda ratifying Utah, consent agenda ratifying Utah Division of Recreation Land and Water Conservation Fund pickleball grant for OSTA. Ratifying the chair's signature on a letter to the School and Institutional Trust Land Administration, SITLA. Ratifying the chair's signature on a purchase order for 2 boat trailers for search and rescue. Specialized service agreement between Grand County, Utah State University, and Utah Conservation Corps. Independent contractor agreement for OSTA scoreboards, modified from April 19th, 2022 approval. Letter of the Utah Division of Air Quality. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Motion by Evan, seconded by
I can second that, Mary. Jacques.
seconded by Jacques. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Got this letter to the Utah Division of Air Quality stuck in my craw. And I just don't know if Grand County is the appropriate place to, I don't know if we're the entity to write this letter. I know it was stated in there, the National Park Service, the EPA is involved, and to me, those agencies are a little bit more applicable. Here's my issue. A couple things. Both of these power plants are slated for retirement in the near future. And to me, communities that we find in Carbon or Emery County are having to slowly transition out of coal, right? And that's a slow transition. And to write letters, I just don't think we're making any friends when we write letters basically telling these, counties to clean themselves up. And I'm not saying this I'm just not articulating my point.
Do you want to make a motion to substitute motion to have that letter of the Utah Division of Air Quality pulled out of the consent agenda?
That's the motion. That's what I would like to see. I just don't think it's appropriate here. I appreciate all the content. I agree with all the content. I think we don't like other counties telling us what to do. I don't think we like the state telling us what to do in certain circumstances. And I don't think reaching out to other counties and telling them what to do, we're not making friends in that manner. And again, those two power plants are slated for retirement. And those 2 power plants, by the way, produce 43% of Utah's power right now. And yeah, I'm struggling with that one.
It's one make substitute motion to have.
Or I just vote against it. That's fine. And Sarah, I totally agree with all of your content. I'm struggling.
I just want to respond to some of your specific points at some point, but if you want to pull it out of the consent agenda first, that's fine.
Okay.
So do a substitute motion.
Okay, so I would make a substitute motion to pull the letter to the Utah Division of Air Quality out of the consent agenda summary.
Motion by Tricia Dean to pull the letter to the Utah Division of Air Qualities out of the consent. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Evan. Okay, so we are now discussing letter to the Utah Division of Air Quality.
So Trish, in response to your comments, I think first and foremost, this letter isn't telling Emory County to clean up their act. This letter is telling the Division of Air Quality to require scrubbers on those coal.
No, I understand all that.
On the coal-fired power plants. So it's not, it has nothing to do with Emory County, really. Those coal-fired power plants were not even asking to be closed. And over 200 other coal-fired power plants around the country use this technology. It's proven cost-effective. And so I think it is a good thing for Grand County to speak out against, because we are the county directly downwind of Emory County. And
well, there's quite a few counties that it would be applicable to. So I would feel better if we did something like this, you know, in conjunction with the other counties. But I think when we come at it alone, and this is the case with many things with Grand County, I think it's a tough deal. Well, so if you want to gather other counties and we come back to the Utah Division of Air Quality, you know, as a collaboration, that's fine. But I just don't feel okay with us telling others what to do. And in the end, it does come down to Emory County. I mean, yes, you're right. It's, but it is going to come down to Emory County. That county is having to transition out of coal, and it's going to take a while. You know, I used to work in those little towns. I worked in Farron, I worked in Huntington, I worked in Castledale, I worked in Orangeville. And so I have a place in my heart for those communities and what they're going through.
Yeah. Trish, I appreciate your sentiment a lot. I just think if Grand County, who's directly downwind, can't speak out about this issue during an open public comment period, then there's a problem. I mean, I think collaboration would be really great, but the thing is that this public comment period is for 30 days and it ends on the 31st. So if we want to submit a comment, it needs to pass tonight. And also, I just think that they're asking for people's opinions, and we are a county full of stakeholders in this, that everyone witnesses the haze that comes from the coal-fired power plants. So I think that we're not telling Emory County what to do. And I gave a little background in the agenda summary as well. The state of Utah did some negotiations with others before, and before the Trump administration, and the Obama administration had agreed to some of these provisions for pollution controls. And then the Trump administration came and just wiped it out. And the state of Utah is just continuing on that plan. And so it's not out of the blue that folks are requesting that those coal-fired power plants implement pollution reducing technology. And it's also, it doesn't have any impact on the workers or the people. They're going to continue to burn coal. It'll just help with our regional haze problem, which also nitrous oxide causes birth defects. So it's a health issue. It's not just a visibility issue. So I'm a strong proponent of the county speaking out on this, and I think we should be involved. The state has asked us to be involved.
Yes, I remember I was at the hearing, or when under the Obama administration, when it was decided to require those cleaning devices be put in. And of course, the coal companies and everything were saying it was going to hurt them. But, you know, growing up in various mining communities, I lived in Wallace, Idaho, and in Kellogg, Idaho, the smoke was so bad that the trees wouldn't grow on the hills. It was horrible. And the mining company screamed and hollered and said that if they were forced to build stacks high enough for the pollution to leave the valley, they would go bankrupt. And they were forced to do it, and no one went bankrupt. In fact, they had their best years ever. So I think asking to replace what was already agreed to 6 years ago is an appropriate thing to ask.
Well, I mean, I think I'd feel a little better about removing it and letting us each, you know, kind of give some input and editing it and bringing it back. I guess I just had an uneasy feeling when I read it. I'll just tell you that. I mean, I can vote it, you guys can all vote for it, and I can vote again, it's okay, we don't all have to vote. on something.
This should be kind of good, because I think this is the first meeting we've all voted unanimously on every item. We usually have at least one or two disagreements. So are there any further discussion?
I have a question, not on this item, but on another item in the consent agenda. Is that for now, or should we be dealing with this amended?
No, right now we are on agenda
Just-
item. I don't have the agenda T. And so we need a motion to, if we want to move forward, I need someone to make a motion in a second, and then we can vote on this item.
Okay.
We have a motion.
We've got a
Second.
motion and a second.
Oh.
So it's two motions.
No, the
that was
motion
just to
was to
remove it from the-
remove it out of the consent agenda. It wasn't a motion to approve the letter. Correct? Am I correct?
That was my understanding. Sarah, do you want to make a motion that states where the letter will be sent?
Yes. I move to approve the letter from the Grand County Commission regarding regional haze to the Division of Air Quality for the state implementation plan public comment period.
Motion by Sarah. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Josie. Further discussion?
I can really appreciate your concerns, Trish, and I think that the public comment period is a time to bring these concerns up and issues up, and I think that it's not necessarily coming out of the blue, and the public comment focuses specifically on addressing these sorts of things. So I think that there will be others weighing in that don't necessarily take rallying from us to kind of join forces, and I think that the public comment period is designed to give individual stakeholders a chance to chime in. So I feel it an appropriate time to voice where we're at, and I think this represents things well.
Any further comments? Discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to accept the letter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes. We're down to 6, so it passed 5-1 with Tricia Dean voting in opposition. Josie, did you want to take something else out of the consent agenda?
Well, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question about the SITLA letter regarding the parcel swaps, because I'm not sure what the status is. Is there like another round of process for that to be confirmed, or has the land swap already been approved?
It's been sent, hasn't it? It's already been sent. It's a ratification. It's not we kind of approved sending it at our last meeting.
No, not the letter, the parcel swap, the actual land swap.
That a little bit.
They're in the middle of it right now. Did they vote on it today? I didn't pay attention.
I think so. Sarah might know.
The Utah Legislative Management Committee voted to approve the Bears Ears land swap as proposed by SITLA at our last meeting. But that is just, they require state legislature approval. So they had 2 avenues. They could go to the entire state legislature, or they could go to this committee, and they did that and they got approval. So now it has to pass Congress. So we still have avenues to try to sway the decision, but the state, it pass without any discussion of Grand County or our letters.
Sure. Should we be directing this letter also to Congress or congressional reps or something like that instead of SITLA, or in addition to? I
think the next iteration will definitely go to the Department of Interior, because they're pushing the swap. They want it to happen. Right. And I'm sure they want to hear what we have to say about it. So I
wonder if that's something that we can add to this item now, just for expediency, or if we have time to revisit this?
We have time to revisit.
I think we have time.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so-
Then no changes.
Okay, so we have, do we have to restate the motion to accept the agenda item? Yeah, let's just do it. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda minus item T?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Oh, discussion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are at calendar items. Calendar items. Oh, yeah.
Gotta pull up the right screen. We don't have a whole lot coming up as far as the county goes. Obviously, we got Memorial Day, and then we do have a week off, a 5th Tuesday in the month, so we don't have a commission meeting then yet. We have Memorial Day, and then we have Juneteenth in the beginning of June. As far as OSTA events, we've got on the 22nd, Gone Moab is an event out of OSTA. And then we've got the 28th through the 30th is Barrels for Bucks out of OSTA. And that's all we have between now and the next meeting.
Okay. We do not have a public hearing nor a closed session. If no one objects, we've reached the end of our agenda, and I shall adjourn this meeting. So adjourned. The time is 7:22. Today, I hope the days of our 9 o'clock meetings are over.